How about that? There we go. There we go. Hey, folks. All right. Happy Sunday. Apologies for taking forever to do a live. There was a whole lot happening in life. As you can tell, I have moved. So I had to move, which is kind of cool because now I'm doing this from an office versus my living room. So I get a little bit more privacy on YouTube. So that helps. And then, like I said, I did a little bit of traveling. What else have I done? Oh, and then I think I told you guys before, I had the classmate that passed away. So their funeral was last weekend. That was the first funeral I've done like musical arrangements for. I didn't do all the music, but one of my good friends, did a selection. So we had worked on their piece on, what they were gonna do. So that was a thing. I'm skipping something and it's not coming to me, but I've been a little busy, right? And moving is no fun, right? I did pay for movers and everything, but I still do like all the pre-packing. You like box up everything and label it because I refuse to be one of those people where the movers come and they're boxing up your dishes and your plate. No, I'll go ahead and do all that. When they got there, all they had to do was take the boxes and put them in the truck. Take the big furniture, put it in the truck, and we were all good. So that's kind of my thing. Let me make sure my sound is good. So yeah, I'm still testing out what my setup is going to be. This is just a temporary for now. Let's see if this is loading properly. I want to make sure I can see me. Okay, yeah. So still figuring out the setup. We'll figure it out. I'm not 100% settled yet, but all will be well. For announcements again, book club, we are wrapping the Rick James book. I feel like we've been reading it for 10 years, but we're going to finish that tomorrow, right? So that's going to be pages 243 until the end of the book. Okay, that's 9 p.m. tomorrow Eastern. The Zoom link is already posted on the community tab. Let me read a few quick shout outs and hellos really quick, and then we'll jump right into it. Okay, yeah, there's so much to cover today. Hopefully we can get to everything. What up, Nikita Clark, Sydney Bullock? What up, let's see. Avocado Queen, what's up? Somebody said, did they open their wine? What up, Nicole? What up? Hey, folks. Lil Eye 3D. Nikita Clark said, military taught me to pre-pack my own boxes. Yeah, that's what I did. Plus, I put so much stuff in storage because there's like additional things I'm planning to do in the next few months. So, yeah. So there's that. But I think it just helps to already have it already arranged. That way, you don't got to worry about your stuff getting stolen. Like when everything's already pre-packaged and taped up in boxes that are sealed, all they can do is move it because most of my stuff is in storage. And versus when they're packing up, jewelry and all that kind of stuff. Oh no, all that's already pre-packaged. You just take the boxes and go, right? Let's see. Then I think I told y'all last live I had bought a car, which I did not want to do, but whatever. My old car was making too many expensive sounds, so I went ahead and bought a car. I went and sat at the DMV for 4.5 hours. So anyway, I made it all the way to, there's like 3 numbers before me. I've been sitting there all day. First of all, it was like an hour just to get in the line, right, at the DMV. So I did that. So it took an hour just to get inside. Then you sat down all day, and there were only 2 numbers left to go. Why did the fire alarm go off at the DMV? And like at this DMV, the one in DC, it's the one off Rhode Island Ave. So it's hooked to all those restaurants and apartments and everything. So the entire building had to evacuate. So the Carolina Kitchen had to evacuate. The Dunkin' Donuts, the apartments, and mind you, the place was getting ready to close. Right? I was like, forget it. I was like, I'm just gonna leave. I'm just gonna go to my favorite burger spot because you know what? At least let me get a burger because I'm gonna have to do this all over again because DMV closes in like 20 minutes. They're not gonna get us back in here. And so I trekked all the way to DuPont Circle to go to Eat Bergs, which they used to have one in Gallery Place right by my apartment, but that one closed. So I went all the way DuPont Circle, circled for 50,000 hours trying to find parking, parked, walked all the way to this restaurant, and it was cold that day, just for them to be out of business. I was like, what is life? You ever just have one of those days? You just be like, oh my God. Man. Okay, let me jump into a few things. So we lost a lot of people in the last few weeks, right? We lost Angie Stone, we lost Roberta Flack, we've lost Dwayne Wiggins from Tony. There's like 2 more people I'm skipping. But crazy week. As far as Angie Stone, I think I said this before. When when I talked about the Sequence, the rap group, now I mentioned them in my Mariah Carey "So It Happened" video, but the craziest thing is, like, growing up, my dad had tons and tons and tons and tons of vinyls, and he was nice enough to give them to me when I turned 13. And so I remember, and this is before the era of Shazam. Like, the thing that used to suck about if there was a song that was in your head and you couldn't remember what it was, you'd have to just kind of figure it out or go through all your CDs or cassettes or vinyls and just keep, searching and searching until you find it. And so at the time, the song that was in my head that I could not figure out, oddly enough, was freaking George Clinton, Atomic Dog, right? It was in my head, and I was trying to figure out who sings that. I'm like 11 or 12. And so I remember, I knew it was an older song. So I was like, well, let me just start digging through all of my dad's vinyls until I find it. Like, I would literally go through every vinyl and play each track, a little snippet, move the needle until I got a similar song. And then I remember I started finding the Zapp and Roger albums, and I was like, oh, maybe it's on here. I say all that to say, while I was going through all the vinyls, I ended up finding the Sequence album, and it has or at least the single, right? Because it had the Sugar Hill Gang thing, and I was confused because, they're on the Sugar Hill label, but I thought that was Rapper's Delight, but it wasn't Rapper's Delight because it said the Sequence and Funk You Right On Up. So I'm like, okay, well, let me listen to that. So I just happened to put it on, I remember, and I always remember there was a line in there where the lady said something like Michael Jackson. I was like, oh, I like this, right? And so little did I know that that same woman in the group was going to be the Angie Stone that was just on MTV Jams earlier, right? And so that's kind of my earliest memory of like Angie Stone is digging through my dad's vinyls, trying to find a George Clinton record, and then you find the Sequence, and then you realize, oh, it's the lady that was just, well, I didn't realize it was the lady on TV till years later, but yeah, so Angie Stone, they also had, when she was in Vertical Hold, Seems You're Much Too Busy is one of my favorite songs out of the early 90s. I've always loved that one. As far as her like solo work, some of my favorite songs was Remy Red. That's off the album that came out, I want to say in 03. The album that had the single, I Want to Thank You. So I really used to love that song. I think, like we said a few lives ago, when I discovered that Simply Red was the group that sang Holding Back the Years, I love her version of Holding Back the Years. It's on the Love and Basketball soundtrack. And I've always loved the duet she had with Ray Charles, the All I Want to Do. That's a really, really nice song. I love that one. So yeah, it was kind of sad that she passed. Oddly enough, like my friend was going to, the actual event that she was en route to when she passed in Baltimore. So it was just a wild time. So it's kind of sad to see so many go. I'm out of focus. Okay. So it's kind of sad to see, people go, because she wasn't very old. She was still relatively young. And that's why I'm always kind of like appreciate the people out of here. And that's one of the reasons why I always make an effort to go and catch everybody live, especially the people who are a bit more seasoned that are getting into like that retirement age or that age where, they're not doing as many shows. Then we also lost Roberta Flack. All right, shout out to Howard University. Roberta, my first, not interaction because I didn't meet her, but my first memory of Roberta Flack is being a kid in like 95, 96, probably 96. Like I said, we always spent all the summers in Savannah and Christmases in Savannah. And I remember my cousin Tiffany, because at the time I was maybe 8. Tiffany would have been, she's 6 years older than me, so she would have been like 14. Tiffany used to record everything off the TV, everything, right? She recorded all the music videos. Like there's so many cassettes at my grandma's house or tapes at my grandma's house of just music videos, award shows. She used to record everything, but I remember she recorded that VMAs at the time. And this is when the Fugees had Killing Me Softly out. It was really, really big. And it's that performance of them doing it. Lauren has the white dress on, like the 2-piece, and then they bring out Roberta Flack. That's the first time I remember ever knowing who she was. They say, bring up, they bring her out. She had the shades on. And she kind of looks like my Aunt Pat. So I was like, okay. So that was my first interaction with Roberta Flack. And then I remember years later, I kind of was familiar with her music, but one of the barbershops I used to go to in undergrad, it was further down in Georgia. I don't think it's there anymore, honestly. But he used to always put on like old concert DVDs and stuff like that while we were waiting. And so there was one special where it was a Roberta Flack special. It's when she has the curly golden brown hair. And it's like she's playing the piano, she's singing "Feel Like Making Love," and then I think she kisses the band member and all that while they do it. That was my memory of her. So then I kind of dug into her catalog. I was like, oh, she has some nice stuff, right? I love all the songs she had with Donny Hathaway, like "You Are My Heaven" and "Back Together Again" and "Where's the Love," and all of those are really, really great. "Closer I Get to You," appreciation for the work that she did with Luther Vandross and how she was able to help him get a leg up in the industry. So Roberta is definitely a gem, but I will say 88 is a great age to go out at, right? Plus, with all the stuff happening now, this is the perfect time to check out. Like, who wants to stick around for this crap? You know what I mean? Then we also lost Dwayne Wiggins from Tony, which is wild because that came out of nowhere. Nobody even knew he was sick, right? I'm glad I got to catch them, you know, when they did the reunion tour either it was last year or the very, very end of 2023, right? Like I said, Tony has always been one of my favorite groups. You know, my favorite song from them is Couldn't Keep It to Myself off the Sons of Soul album. I love that song. And it's a smooth one on that album because it goes from like Slow Wine to Lay Your Head on My Pillow to Couldn't Keep It to Myself. Though that 3-track one that's a gem right there, right? I like the solo work. What's Going On song was pretty cool. And of course, you know, he's credited for a lot of, like, even with the idea of a Beyonce, right? People forget that Destiny's Child initially signed under him when they first were getting out there. I think they got signed in like 95, right? And did a bunch of development with him. And then he still played a role in 3 of their first albums, right? He did some work with Keisha Cole before she blew up. And so, you know, just want to make sure you give everybody their flowers. I hate that so many are transitioning out. And that's why you kind of have to celebrate people while they're here. And I do hope that as these voids, you know, kind of become voids, that we do get a lot of newer faces that come into the picture. And it's not about refilling or replacing somebody, but just giving something new, giving us something that we haven't seen before. So many great musicians have been transitioning out over the last few years. And the way that the industry is structured and set up, it doesn't create a space for there to be a lot of innovativeness, right? Everybody has to follow a trend that's already out. Everybody has to do whatever's going to keep the labels happy. Now the labels have all folded. There's like 3 major labels, and they have rosters that are too big, so they can't properly market their artists. We have a lot of, you know, indie and do-it-yourself artists, which is great, but they don't get the same exposure, so it's kind of hard to discover them. It's just a weird time for music and stuff. But I wanted to make sure I gave my condolences to everybody. I didn't get to see the Angie Stone funeral, but I know it was on. Some people were able to stream it the other day, so that was that. Let me pause and read some comments, and then we have some heavy topics tonight. Heavy. And then we will go from there. It's been some nonsense going on. Nonsense. Let's see. Kim Clark, what up? Charlene said, I sound good on the sound. Okay, good. The sound sounds good. All right. What up, Julian? Charlene saying, congrats on the car purchase. I'm still mad about it because now I got a car note. Listen, I was going to keep that car I had since 2014. It was a 2010, but I had it since 2014. I was going to drive that thing till it stopped working. But it started making too many like expensive sounds and shaking. And, you know, you turn it on, you hear like a... I'm like, man. And then Cuckoo Man and his tariffs and everything. I was like, let me just get a car now because the car is about to skyrocket in like a month. So I'm glad I bought when I bought because maybe the week after I bought my car is when all this stupid tariff crap started happening. Man. Let's see. Jerry Butler, we lost. We also lost, was it Michael Berry Cooper, who's actually in my New Jack Swing deep dive. That's almost here. Let's see. Sarah, you said, I feel so sad she wasn't paid enough. I'm going to come back to that because, man, it's not even just her. It's so many. And I'm going to come back to it. But, yeah, it's triggering a bit. Let's see. Somebody said, but these people are dying so young at 60 something. Yeah, 60 is not old. 60 is relatively young. Tina Turner was still spinning on her head at 60. Look, Janet is about 60. She's still in Vegas right now doing backflips. And so... yeah, Roy Ayers. Oh, that's another one I skipped. Everybody loves the sunshine, street life, right? Man, it is what it is. That's why you got to cherish and embrace and love on the people that are here while they're here. Okay, let me see here. I'm getting a text from my family. I'm gonna deal with them later. Some family drama going on, and I ain't in it. I'm not happy to live where I live. Okay. Anyway, with everything that's happening, right? We've seen. I keep trying to roll this chair and I keep forgetting this. I'm so used to being in my living room where I can roll way back. I can't roll. There's a wall right here. Okay. So with everything that's happening, everything from our new administration, the Doge brigade that's come up in here and fired everybody and their mom, the lack of intelligent people that are in charge of all these agencies, the chaos in our politics. There's so much happening, right? And I really hope that, well, one thing I'll say is with all that's happening, I still think people have to find time to just live. And I mean that in a way where it's not saying ignore what's happening, but we cannot sit and harp and saturate on all of the doom and gloom, or we're going to be in the early grave too. And we'll be on the next live talking about somebody else that died, right? And so for me, I've really just been working to like protect my peace. I'm still very well aware of everything that's happening, but at the same time, my current escapism right now has really just been music, like rediscovering different artists and everything like that. I love watching concerts on YouTube that I haven't seen before. Just doing different things that kind of give me balance. I can't wait to go back to the gym tomorrow. So that's always been a thing too. But just in this moment where there's so much that's happening, like pay attention to what's happening, but don't let it consume and just eat you apart, right? Because at the end of the day, a lot of this stuff is so far above us at the moment. It's kind of like you're going to have to ride it out until there's options to kind of change and shift some of the stuff, unfortunately. And I hope this era serves as a wake-up call that people really take note of what it is we're kind of up against society-wise, especially as Black people. I've been saying for the longest, I think there's too many people who have such a relaxed approach to life as far as what to be concerned about, where remember how I've been saying, not we, but people have been giving an inch to nonsense so much, and now those inches have turned into miles, and people are running a marathon on our lives right now. This is kind of that time where I hope people are really getting that wake-up call and understanding that, politics is a long game. Just making it in society at the moment is something where you got to kind of have to be on top of your stuff, right? Have your moments in time to take care of your peace, but don't, put your guard down and just let folks come in and just do Lord knows what. And also understand too, if you are not built to oversaturate in a lot of things that are traumatic, then like I said, you find alternative ways to kind of get an understanding of what's happening. But I just know, I can just imagine the hypertension that some people have right now by, jumping into everything that hits us. Because again, this was all in that whole Project 2025 thing anyway. Just bombard us with a bunch of nonsense daily to the point where we can't even keep up with things. It's crazy that, if this were, I don't know, 10 years ago and everything that was happening now, the news cycle would just never turn off because there would be so many things. We've gotten to a point where even the chaos that's happening is starting to become normalized even more, which is what we don't want to happen. But unfortunately, it's happening. And I think it's a response just of humanity in general. We always are going to find a way to kind of balance out our peace of mind when things are happening. But sometimes it comes off as people being too passive or being okay with what's happening, right? And so we don't want to fall into that space. And like I've said, the thing that's crazy that I will say as far as protecting your peace, what I call right now is we're in the era of the whiteness renaissance. White folks have just lost their minds and they are running like dogs without leashes. And so it's important to make sure that the things that we give our energy to are the things that matter, not the things that we know they're going to do to get under our skin, right? We know they're going to go in and attack our symbolic nuggets that we didn't ask for. Somebody was asking me my thoughts on, like even, in a lot of the cities, they had those big Black Lives Matter murals painted in the street and stuff like that. And, in DC, at least, that one is being taken apart as we speak. I was trying to explain to somebody that, okay, technically that wasn't anything we asked for. And it is a bit triggering because you know what it's rooted in as far as them taking something like that down. But for me, that's not the sole focus of where our energy should go right now. That should be what we need to be out at the rallies and kicking trash cans over for. Not that. That was a symbolism nugget, And I've already told you guys before, symbolism is great, but symbolism is not anything tangible. Symbolism is just a way to make you feel good during an era or a period of nonsense where things aren't aligning right. And as nice as those yellow words were on the street, that wasn't anything tangible. So you know what? I'm like, let the little, chalk disciples have it. It is what it is. And so the thing that I think we need to focus on is, again, making sure that we're paying attention to the policy, making sure that we're paying attention to the things that are a bit more tangible, the things that will affect us in the short term and long term, indirectly and directly, right? And the funniest thing is, it also goes to show that Black people have really been on the bottom end of a lot of the programs and resources, because the funniest thing is the programs that they're actually gutting that affect us affect them, which is why when they can find one of these symbolism nuggets to kind of tear apart or take down, they think that they've gotten an upper hand on something. Oh, we're going to take down the Black Lives Matter mural. Yeah. Or some of these streets or schools that were renamed because they were named after Confederate generals. Oh, we're going to name it back after Robert E. Lee or blah, 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 blah. Okay. I mean, it was there anyway. I mean, it was only changed for 3-4 years. Those weren't things we asked for to begin with. Those are, if we want to really be honest, those are things that a lot of white liberals who wanted to feel good about going against racism, they said, oh, let's change the names of the streets and the schools. Fine. If you follow me, I always said, even with the Confederate monuments, I said, don't take them down, leave them up there, but put in the description exactly what it was that they stood for. This person stood for the enslavement of Black people and stood for, patriarchy and the oppression of women and blah, 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 blah. Put the real description there. By trying to hide the history and take it out of the picture, it creates a problem in the same way that they're trying to erase Black history now and take it out of the picture. And the issue is when you continue to gut and chop away and try to hide history because you want the next generation to be dumber than the previous, understand that this is when things can repeat themselves. And so we're kind of living in an era now where we're watching things that we thought we were so far beyond come right back in our face full throttle. And it's because a lot of times we either ignored, and I don't like saying we, but when I'm saying we, I'm just talking about the United States as a whole, America collectively, right? It's not us individually, but when we're talking about the country as a whole, the country chose to ignore a lot of things. The country chose to run on the post-racial parade. And so for almost 20, 30 years, while all these racist policies and everything were slowly being ingrained within society, we were fed the symbolism nuggets of we're all inclusive and we're all free and we're post-racial and everybody join hands together and we can all sit in the classroom together and sing a song and you're going to have the Martin Luther King Day parade and all of these great things. And there was that false illusion that everything was good, right? It was the false illusion that things that we saw from the 50s and the 60s in those clips were so far beyond us that we would never repeat those again. And then here we are in 2025 with all of the access to information that's available, with all of the advancements and opportunities for education that's there. How is society regressing so quickly, right? It just goes to show that none of this was precedent. And so, like I said, focus on the policy here. It makes me think, too, I saw this quote that was coming from one of the officials out of the White House, which I said, oh, interesting. And this is with regard to, again, the cuts in the Medicaid. And this White House official had stated, Medicaid is not just for Black people in the ghetto. These are our voters, said a Republican operative close to the White House. And so it's kind of like, again, people have been so far removed from the idea that all of this policy has us all connected, especially working and middle-class Americans. But so many thought that race or the privilege of whiteness gave them the upper hand in a situation where they've made Black people the face of everything wrong with the United States. So the programs that actually benefit white Americans at a much higher ratio and percentage than us, we were painted as the face of all those problems. And so as these candidates have run on these campaigns with all the things that they're going to gut and get rid of and the fraud and the waste, and they kept painting us to be the face of it, and now they're going after Medicaid, they're going after Social Security, all these things that every American benefits from. But how did they push and market the aggression towards it? Make it look like it's us that's abusing the system, and it's us stealing the welfare queens and the Social Security fraud, and people who are 150 years old still collecting checks. They're just saying any and everything, right? And so, again, we're going to have to balance what we put our energy and focus on. Right now, I'm at a space where if it's not policy focused and we can see, again, that conversation of cause and effect, I'm not losing sleep over it, at least right now. Some of those other things we'll get back however we get them back. But I think it's all about really focusing on what actually matters, right? What affects this current generation and the generations after us? And so the symbolism nuggets, as sad as it is to see them go, I'm not about to be outside protesting and throwing bricks over that. Sorry. And what you're also seeing is kind of like that domino effect, right? And this is the craziest thing, and I've been saying this for a while, but it's like literally like I call like the whiteness domino effect, how everything is just kind of fallen into place. All they needed was the signal, right? And it's crazy how quickly you saw everybody fall in line. The first phase, of course, was the mandates. Federal government or the current president, executive order this, executive order that, fire these people, get rid of these agencies, get rid of the DEI, this has to go, that has to go, get rid of all these things. You watch all these agencies that are federally mandated comply right away. No kickback. You're starting to see some lawsuits here and there, but it's interesting how quickly they just jumped in line. Then you started seeing the threats with funding towards different schools or programs that receive funding, and you saw how quickly a lot of those like entities or like businesses shifted. And it wasn't even just that. We've even seen it with people who want to run for office, where we've seen billionaires threaten and say, hey, if you choose not to vote for this, we're going to primary you. People who have never had their hand in politics, but they're billionaires, and they can step in and pretty much buy candidates. That's where we're at right now, right? That's the game we're in right now. Candidates can be bought. So you have that happening. Then you have the people who were just voluntarily compliant. They weren't even told to do anything, but they jumped right into it, right? No kickbacks again. And you start watching companies start rolling back different programs and initiatives and everything. And then the next phase is like the people who is like what I call the no one even asked you compliance. Well, who even told you to open your mouth? Paramount Pictures, right? You just watched Paramount, an entire production company, gut all of their like DEI initiatives and everything. And I'm like, I don't even see why y'all are in this conversation. When it comes to entertainment, every group needs to be represented. Every group has an audience. Every audience wants to watch something different. So why all of a sudden would you center entertainment on the gaze of white men again? Okay, that's why your ratings were down to begin with. That's why nobody's downloading the app to begin with. So it's very interesting. So now we see the federal agencies are all over the place. Colleges are starting to roll back programs, roll back offers. I just saw the one school that had to rescind their PhD offers. We've seen our media networks get compromised. We've seen prominent, TV journalists that had high ratings cancel, even with Joy Reid. Like, I was looking at the numbers, and they're talking about how even her ratings, even though ratings for MSNBC have been low, hers were actually still where they needed to be. But look, they got her out of there, right? And so you're seeing the shifts with CNN. You're just seeing it's a lot going on. Even retail, Target is learning the hard way. And I will say this: now that they've had the one-day boycott, because I didn't want to be the person. I'll say this: I don't want to be a person known for getting in the way of progress. But personally, the one-day boycott on February 28th, I was not a fan of. I still participated, but I felt that was a very 2016 approach. I think with everything happening now, our politics, our strategic planning, everything has to organize and calibrate with where we are now. And I think, unfortunately, politically, there's been so many moments where people are still moving with the old guard and trying to utilize that to influence the new guard. That doesn't work right now. Like, I think people need to realize, look at what we're living through. None of this is normal. You have a cabinet that can do practically whatever they want. Most of our politicians are bought out, compromised, or too scared to shake the table. And so the idea of doing certain things we've already done before that didn't work, that's not going to change anything. And I was so annoyed, even though, again, I wasn't going to be the one trying to dismantle progress because a lot of people were excited about it, so I didn't want to be in the way. But I was like, we did this in 2016, and we did this in 2015. This is almost even like when we used to, remember the blackout or the Black Fridays, and it would be like, don't shop at the businesses on Black Friday, only shop at the black businesses on Black Friday, and don't go to the main things. And I was always like, so on the day where everything's actually cheaper, we're going to boycott, and then we're going to come back when they're back to regular price, and then they get a bigger profit out of us, right? It's just like there's all these different things that we've done before. And this goes back to the conversation of cause and effect and trial and error. And I feel like if you paid attention long enough, you've been here long enough to see cause and effect, trial and error, and we should start to know what works and what doesn't. So when it came with the February 28th thing, to me, it was such a big thing, but at the same time, it was for one day. I was like, one day is not enough to do anything. If you're trying to send a message, you got to do more than a day. You got to do more than a week. Now, I know right now there's the 40-day boycott of Target. That I'm cool with, right? 40 days is more than enough time to really shake a table. I think the challenge we ran into with the February 28th, even though apparently it did have some positive effect, there were some businesses that suffered to an extent. I think when you have such a balloon approach to just everything, there wasn't a lot of clear guidance on some things, and there were some people who were confused about a lot of things. I just think if that's the route we got to go, or people want to go, I would prefer that things are just a bit more structured and, just well-oiled. And again, this is not to knock, because at least people are trying to do something, right? I don't want to be in the way of progress, but let's not continue to do what we've already been doing. We don't need to sing anything. We don't need to show up to sing nowhere, right? We don't need to march around any buildings 13 times, so like the Battle of Jericho when the walls came tumbling down, Al Sharpton. Like we don't have to go to Costco and do a thank you march because Costco decided that they weren't going to gut their DEI programs. And so we show up to Costco and do some thank you shopping. Like, there's certain things I don't think we have to do, right? I get it, but I think some of the approaches are getting dated. That's just me. I'm not trying to sound like a hater, but the last few weeks, I'm just like, and to be fair, as a Black collective, we've never known liberation to begin with. So nobody has the official answer on what works best. So that's why we're always trying something different. But I don't want us to keep doing things we've already done before, right? Especially if it led to no avail. All those years of the Black Friday blackouts led to nothing. It led to nothing. And so that's kind of where I'm at. But I'll say this. The main things I've been preaching for the last few years have always been that what they've been working on is, again, privatizing the cash in. That's what's happening now with the federal government. All these agencies that are being attacked, it's, again, privatize all of them, cash in, lots of money to be made. The other thing we said before, cementing the old guard. They are trying to, lock in, create how they want things to be, and then lock it in. That's why even when you're looking at this current cabinet, look at the people who are in the cabinet. One, most of them are billionaires. Two, most of them have no correlation or experience within the department that they're now heading. You got the lady over at WWE in charge of education. And what was her first task? As soon as she got in there, start gutting the Department of Education. She could care less about the Department of Education because she's a billionaire. She doesn't need a job. So her closing this department is nothing for her. She's sleeping good tonight, right? So you had that going. And the last thing is, of course, deregulating for profits, which is what I want to get into. So I'm going to pause for 1 second because we're about to go through a whole lot of nonsense, but I do want to read a few comments here. And then I'm going to keep it going. Lord, give me peace in my heart so I ain't got to throw hands tonight. Okay, let's see. What up, Alan Lewis? Also, congrats, Alan. I think I saw you got 5th place in the competition. Somebody said we're losing too many people. Yes, we are. Ayana J. Somebody said Rat Patty and Stevie and some bubble wrap. Listen, I need Patty, Gladys, all of them. Ron Isley, Eddie Levert, all of them. Just cover them because listen, the day Gladys goes, I'm gonna have to take a day off work. Lord, oh man. Let me see here. Somebody said that mom loved Roberta Flack. Somebody said, oh, I'm gonna tear into Chuck Schumer in a little bit. Don't worry. Can't wait to get him. Somebody said Calvin was trying to ride the wheels until they, literally that car I was gonna hold on to, but it was starting to become expensive because it was like every few months I'd have to spend $1,200 or $1,300 or $1,400 on something to fix with it. And at that point, it's like the blue book value of that car was probably $1,800. I'm like, let me just get a new car, right? It'll be paid off in 72 months. A car note. Let me see. Somebody said music has always been their escape. Somebody said balance is very important right now. Be aware of what's happening, but detach, nurture, and reset. Exactly. Right? Mm-hmm. Somebody said when they take our stuff symbolically, it screws them over too, and they don't even know it. And now they're learning, especially with these programs and stuff that are being cut. That's why these town halls are finally starting to kick up. And like I said on the last live, we won't see any. Okay, this mic is killing me. I'm gonna turn this thing around. There we go. Okay, we won't see any change until white people get tired. They're still not collectively tired enough yet. Yes, the town halls are starting to jump a little bit, right? Stuff is starting to get some more numbers, but white people collectively still ain't tired yet, right? Understand, this is a collective that has always been taught that they were right about everything. So to have to acknowledge that you guys are on the wrong side of history and have always been, and you collectively have been in the way of American progress because you've always spent so much time working to ensure that everybody stayed beneath you, that it affected the entire trajectory of this country. It affected GDP. It affected the innovativeness that we could have had. It affected the partnerships and collaborations we could have had with other countries, that we could have had with other industries. And instead, we spent so much time not investing in education or infrastructure and healthcare because folks didn't want everybody to have what they thought only should be for them. So here we are. Now you're on the receiving end of it, and you're starting to realize that really the super, super rich never cared about y'all to begin with. But they gave you guys the illusion that you were a part of this because you had whiteness on your side. But what you didn't have on your side were billions of dollars individually like they do. And so, yeah, they taught you to hate us. They taught you to feel empowered. Even working class white folks who have literally nothing and depend on every federal government program, resource, handout, entitlement, like they like to call it, still would rally and get excited about seeing somebody else lose those very programs that they also need. And now that these programs are getting gutted, everybody's scared. They showed up to the town halls. And this is why I said they still haven't learned a lesson yet, because they're not fighting for the common good of the country. They're fighting for their individual concerns. They're fighting for their daughters who lost their job offers and they want their daughter to get their job back. They're fighting for their individual health mandates or whatever affects them. But collectively and as a country, they still aren't thinking of the greater good of the common collective in the United States. It's just them. That's where they're at. And that's why you're still not seeing the right kind of outrage. Because honestly, if some of these people get the handful of things that they're asking for, they'll be content with everything else. They'll go back to enjoying the nonsense, because again, they're just making sure that they're good. And so that's the problem, and that's why we haven't seen a whole lot of effective change yet. This is still becoming a very individual society where everything's about me, myself, and I. What I got, what can you do for me, and what didn't you do for me? And that's why I'm not voting for this, and I don't care what burns down because I didn't get what I wanted. That's kind of where society has gotten, rather than looking at things from a collective standpoint, which is now why even science is under attack. People didn't like being inconvenienced during the pandemic, so now all of a sudden the scientists don't know anything. In this era where you got bird flu doing whatever it's doing, you saw Doge get rid of the team that was doing the research on Ebola. And then they realized they messed up. I was like, oh, our bad. Hold on, y'all got to come back. Come on back. Because listen, Ebola would be something we would not want to spread around here. That's not anything like COVID. Like Ebola, your insides literally melt and the survival rate is only like 40%. Okay, certain things we don't want to just show up. But there's so many people who couldn't stand the idea of being inconvenienced temporarily for the good of the common, collective, and became very selfish. And so now we're in this era where we got a measles outbreak. I think over close to 300 cases in Texas now, because you had all these people who refused to go and get the measles vaccine, which has been a thing since forever and a day. But everybody thinks they know more than the scientists and the people that go to school for years and do research and so on and so forth. They know more because they went on the internet. And Alex Jones told them this, that, and the third. And all they got to do is eat some cantaloupe and take some grains of ground pepper and rub it in behind their ears, and that'll fix it, and all this other crazy stuff. Now we got measles spreading everywhere. Bunch of nonsense. I swear, idiots. Anyway, let's see. Somebody said the bus boycotts lasted over a year. And I said this on the last live, we're in an era where everybody's too comfortable to even boycott something for a year at this point. Because we're in an era of what I call comfortable resistance. People will do just enough, but they ain't going to do too much because they don't want to get uncomfortable. People aren't willing to sacrifice a whole lot, especially if they see that others aren't doing it. They're like, nope, I ain't about to, nope, nope. And that's why I think boycotts are so hard for a lot of things. For a lot of people, they just aren't moving as a collective anymore. It goes back to when we did the video on Shamik Moore, when he said Rosa should have took a cab, and I was like, you missed the whole point. You missed the whole point. And he said, yeah, because she could have took a cab. There were black-owned cab businesses out there. And y'all not ready for that conversation. I'm gonna have to talk to this with the elders. I said, well, you go bring them too, so I can call them, tell them they stupid too if they agree with that nonsense. But again, missing the point, right? All about me, myself, and I. Crazy. Folks get in one movie or drop an album and then they know all the world, right? We're in this era of surface level politics and history. Everybody looks at the bare minimum, scratches the surface, and then has an entire dissertation ready to present of a bunch of foolishness and leading everybody into the burning house. Cece said, at least you purchased the car before the tariffs. I'll say, thank God, right? Amen. Somebody said, exactly, Calvin. The clear people are the ones that are going to stop this particular situation. They're going to start handling stuff how they handle it overseas. Watch it. It's because people keep trying to say, where's the black people? How come black people aren't moving yet? I was like, well, we can't keep saving everybody and everything, right? Because the other thing is, like, we get treated so poorly in this country, but then we're the demographic that always has to save the democracy, only to save the very system that's going to still screw us over, right? That's the part that gets me. Everybody wants us to carry the load, be the mule, fight for every other group of people, right? They get mad when we fight for ourselves, get pissed off. How dare you, right? And then even when you're looking at all the groups that were so mad, I feel like I'm even seeing a slowdown. Some of the very people who were just asking, like, where are the black folks a month ago, I'm not even seeing them anymore. I said, what happened to y'all movements? Y'all all got real quiet. Like, what happened here? Where y'all at? Like, okay, y'all got it. It's y'all world. We just living in it. Let me see here. All right, we got to keep it moving. I got so many things to talk about. Okay. So speaking of, when we talked about the main three things that I said that are really the theme with what's happening with our current government: cementing, privatizing for profit, deregulating for profit. Let's talk about CFPB, right? Let me read this link really quick because this is going to tie to so many things we've talked about before. CFPB drops lawsuit against Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase, and Wells Fargo over Zelle fraud. The Consumer Financial Protections Bureau is dropped. Mind you, this is already an agency that's already been gutted too, right? They've already gutted and fired half the people. This is the last few people that are still there, right? The CFPB is dropping its lawsuit against the company that runs the Zelle payment platform and 3 U.S. banks as federal agencies continue to pull back on previous enforcement actions now that President Donald Trump is back in office. In December, federal regulators sued JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, and Bank of America, claiming the banks failed to protect hundreds of thousands of consumers from rampant fraud on Zelle in violation of consumer finance laws. In the federal civil complaint, the CFPB asserted that the banks rushed to get the peer-to-peer payments platform to market without effective safeguards against fraud, and then, after consumers complained about being defrauded on the service, largely denied them relief. Early Warning Services, a fintech company based in Scottsdale, Arizona, that operates Zelle, was named as a defendant in the lawsuit. EWS is owned by 7 U.S. banks, including JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, and Bank of America. Those 3 banks are the largest financial institutions on the Zelle network, accounting for 73% of the activity on Zelle in 2023. But a filing in the U.S. District Court for the District of Arizona on Tuesday indicated that the CFPB was dismissing its lawsuit against EWS, Bank of America, JP Morgan, and Wells Fargo with prejudice. The dismissal comes less than a week after the CFPB dropped several enforcement actions against companies like Capital One and Rocket Homes. In notices of voluntary dismissals that were filed, the CFPB dropped lawsuits it had brought against Capital One, Rocket Homes, Vanderbilt Mortgage and Finance, owned by Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway, and others. Those suits were all filed under the agency's previous director, Rohit Chopra, who Trump fired just weeks ago. The CFPB has since plunged into turmoil, with the White House later ordering it to halt nearly all of its work. The administration also closed the agency's headquarters and moved to fire scores of its workers. Trump has defended his administration's broadside against the CFPB, including recent claims about the agency being set up to destroy people. But supporters of the agency stress that it provides crucial oversight and protects consumers from being vulnerable to predatory business practices. The CFPB isn't the only federal agency to signal pullback on previous enforcement action under the new administration. The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission has either closed or paused legal action against several cryptocurrency platforms in recent weeks as the regulator tries to present itself as a more crypto-friendly agency under Trump. Last month, Binance and the SEC filed a joint motion to pause its high-profile lawsuit against the crypto exchange. The SEC filed a similar joint motion with Coinbase. In addition, Robinhood has said that the case against it has been closed. All right. Okay, so what does that all mean, and why do we care? Well, here's the thing. First of all, when we're talking about regulation and protections for the actual people, once we get into a space where there's no oversight and these corporations and companies can do whatever they want, who do you think often ends up becoming collateral to most of the nonsense? It's not usually the super wealthy people, because they have the kind of resources to protect themselves against whatever, and they can also pay the top-notch lawyers. It's us. It's the everyday people. It's the working class. It's the middle class. It's the people who got a whole bunch of credit card debt or college debt or medical debt or paying too much for childcare. It's all of us who end up on the receiving end. And so when we talk about even Wells Fargo, we can name Wells Fargo in so many different other issues. We had the issues with appraisals, right? Remember what we talked about in Long Island, how the research had showed during that study that when it came to appraising houses, that the appraisals for Black homeowners was so much lower than white homeowners, and it was on purpose, right? We saw what happened with the fake accounts that were created, right? Because they were trying to meet and make sure that they met their bottom line. We saw what was happening with predatory lending and subprime loans. We saw, especially when we're talking like countrywide, with what they did with the subprime loans, which eventually led to our recession because of the housing financial crisis. And when we're talking about, you go to about 2002, 2003, when the interest rates got really, really low. And so a lot of people wanted to purchase homes because it was the perfect time. And places like Countrywide and a few other agencies and banks decided, okay, well, now we'll start giving subprime loans and predatory lending. And we'll give people these loans for these mortgages that we know they can't afford. We're going to give them these kind of interest rates that are not locked in, that can balloon at any time. right? And so you may have gotten your house at 2.3% at the time, but you weren't in a locked-in interest rate. And fast forward, the company decides, oh, we're going to raise this, we're going to raise that, or this happens, that happens. Next thing you know, your interest rate is 9, 10, 11%, and you can't afford the payments anymore, and you're in foreclosure. And so you had all those different things happen. And so you're watching all of these safeguards and protections continue to get dropped because, again, this is all in favor of all the super wealthy folks who want to be rich, all the super wealthy folks who want a piece of the pie. You know, the pie that we worked so hard to build that they're eating all of, and we don't get anything. All we got to do, we just get to wash the pan, right? So we can make some more pie for them to eat. And then the other thing is it makes it harder for lawsuits to take place. And that's one of the other things. And I'm like, when we're talking about the lawsuits and the follow through and complaints, because we're having so many of these agencies get gutted and so many of the laws just kind of get thrown and tossed around and it doesn't matter. We're coming into an era where a lot of working class, middle class Americans are going to be on the receiving end of very bad, what I call trickster shenanigans. We're going to see a whole lot of crazy things start taking place and people are going to lose a whole lot because those protections are no longer there. And again, people who don't have the resources or even the education in banking and finance are going to be the biggest victims to that. And one of the things that I think is going to happen, and we're going to wait and see, is we've been talking a lot about RealPage, which was the company that used AI and the algorithm to determine everybody's rent prices. And initially, it started in just a few states. I specifically highlighted what was happening here in DC and how I want to say it was either 11, 12, or 14 landlords in DC all utilize RealPage, and that was for 60,000 different units across DC. And what that ended up doing was skyrocketing everybody's rent. So even the last 2 buildings that I did live in are mentioned under that lawsuit. The last building that I lived in is under, God, what's that company? Look, I moved down, forgot already. I know the first building I was in was under WC Smith, and then, hell, I'll just look it up real quick. And this current, or the place that I just moved out of, let's see. I forgot what the name of the company is. That's what company was this? I don't remember. Paradigm was mentioned in the lawsuit, right? Where people, at least since 2014, have been paying too much for rent, all because you let technology and AI do whatever it needs to do and make everything super competitive, and it worked against the interest of the renters, but worked in the interest of the landlord companies, and so you kind of had that happening. And the other thing too, because when we're even talking about rents, one of the things I was trying to explain to somebody, and we talked about this in my Whoopi video, where when she had the whole thing about why millennials weren't having kids, and it was because y'all ain't working hard enough and so on and so forth. Like, understand, since 1985, rent prices have exceeded income by 325%, and this is why we're now living through this time period where even when people have 2 jobs, still not enough to pay rent, depending on what they have going. And so what you're starting to see, again, when we're talking about that conversation of cementing, is people are like cashing in and then closing the door. Think back to Governor Abbott from Texas. Remember, he was walking and that tree that was 75 years old, or he was jogging. There was that tree that was 75 years old that wasn't being taken care of properly. The branch fell, hit him, and he whacked him, laid him out. He was paralyzed. He ends up getting $11 million. Right? He sues, gets $11 million, and then has the nerve to run for office and run on tort reform, which was crazy. Right. And it was the idea of, curtailing frivolous lawsuits. Mind you, he just got $11 million. And that's the figure that we know of. He may have gotten more, and we may not find out until he kicks the bucket. But $11 million, he creates, he runs on this to ensure that nobody else can have the same kind of outcome that he has. And so he's successful with that. And when we look at what happens in the state of Texas now, when you're talking about the different kind of lawsuits, it's so much harder to sue for certain things like that. And mind you, this took place at a time where we already had a bunch of class action lawsuits taking place and everything happening when we're talking the mid-90s. When we're talking about 93 to 96. 94, you had the big lawsuit with McDonald's. Remember, the lady spilled the coffee, got a whole bunch of money. But then there was that bigger suit, right, with PG&E, 330 million people, where you had the company that knew they had all the toxins and everything else happening in the area, and you got all those people sick, and they had that big old settlement. But there were so many cases happening in the mid-90s, and all of a sudden, folks up top was like, okay, we're going to have to shut that down. So we started seeing all these new laws and tort laws and different initiatives come into place to kind of combat how easy it would be for people like us, working class or middle class Americans, to sue or, get the right kind of compensation for being treated poorly with whatever situation. And so now we're starting to still see that take place in modern times. It hasn't stopped yet, right? So, they're doing whatever they do to protect their friends, and they gatekeep all the money. And again, it's, man, I have so many notes on here. Even when you think about what happened with Flint, the fact that the charges that initially were going to be, filed against all the people who were complicit with everything with Flint, that's been thrown out. This is kind of where we're living in. So these kind of things are not just limited to like certain states. This is nationwide. Even when we talk about Trump's DOJ, like the case I want to focus on, and this is specifically in Louisiana, is the Denka case, right? So we've talked about this on a few lives, and I think even when I was still doing In the News, we talked about this. But there's that region of Louisiana called Cancer Alley, where there's a whole region where you have all of these different factories and everything, right? And so there was a suit that was brought against Denka, which is owned by the company Rapport or whatever, right? Now, there's been this ongoing lawsuit. I want to say the lawsuit started in 2019, 2020. I can't remember. But either way, the lawsuit has been yanked. And when you find out why it's been yanked, DEI somehow has something to do with this. So I want to go to, oh my God, what country do we live in? Everybody's just so stupid. All right. This is the official statement coming from the White House with regard to the lawsuit that has now been thrown out. And mind you, I'm going to get to the stats with the people who have been on the receiving end of all the nonsense coming from being on the receiving end of being in a place where you got a bunch of toxins, right? The dismissal fulfills President Trump's Day 1 executive order, ending racial and wasteful government DEI programs and preferencing signed to eliminate ideological overreach and restore impartial enforcement of federal laws. So somehow a whole bunch of people getting sick is DEI. So can we just go over some numbers here, right? So you have this plant that's kind of in a residential area in New Orleans. There's also a school right smack in the middle of this. Now the area is called like Resource, or the community of Resource is the area. People living in the community of Resource are 50 times more likely to develop some kind of cancer, right? Not even just a specific cancer, just any cancer, prostate, breast, ovarian, brain, everything every cancer you can think of, 50 times more likely to be a member of the cancer diagnosis team, right? Like that's what's happening because of just how much stuff is out there. And so with this plant, there have been issues because they had over 50 different toxic chemicals coming into either the water, in the ground, in the air. But the main chemical that is the issue is called chlorophene, right? It's something that's utilized when making synthetic rubber. And since 1968, this plant has been there. And the problem is, like we said, the toxins have gotten in the water, it's gotten in the air, even the crops. The farmers in the areas talked about how the okra that they grew grows black okra. Not like black like Big Mama make it. Oh, that's black people okra. No, the color black. You cut an okra and it's black, right? That's how bad the land and soil is in the area. And so the company claimed, they claimed a few years ago, oh, well, we've been able to cut the emissions of the toxins by 85%. So we don't need to do any more regulation and everything else like that. And of course, they got in the ears of people like Trump and his folks. And so they sat there and lied. And so one of the justifications as to why the lawsuit also got dropped, in addition to DEI, because again, this is an area where pretty much everybody's black, right? The other thing was they were trying to say, oh, well, the company met its threshold of cutting emissions, which is a lie. I have the numbers right here because how white people lie so freaking much, man. So here's some numbers, because again, when we're talking about a safe level of the toxins in the air, this is coming from the EPA, which is also being gutted, by the way. The level is never supposed to go past 0.2, right? Since 2016, the EPA has been monitoring air quality at the locations around the plant, including a nearby elementary school that also has 400 students. And they are routinely dozens of times over the 0.0 or the 0.2 guidance. Let me tell you what the numbers have been. 2017, it was up to 5. Again, remember, we said 0.2, not even 1%, 0.2. I'm at a whole 5% right now in the early half of 2017. It jumps up to 14 in the middle half of 2017. It jumps to 16 in the latter half of 2017. It jumps to 19. Again, the measurement of what was supposed to be acceptable is 0.2. We're now at 19%. Okay, it drops down to 11%. I guess this is around the time they start getting some smoke and there's threats for a lawsuit, but it's still way above. Long story short, when we get to the end of 2017, the levels are, hold on, make sure I got these right numbers here. This one here, 23, as far as the levels of how much. Like, that's ridiculous. It's not 0.2% to 23%, right? That means almost a quarter of the air and everything that's coming out of the factory is like, I need people to make it make sense. Yeah, are we missing the point here? Like, they're sitting here lying. And so, again, with them dropping this lawsuit, the company's trying to claim, well, we met the threshold of the 0.2%. And mind you, by the way, if anybody wants the research that I'm referencing, there's a woman, Wilma Schumer, who's done the research on that. And what's crazy is the research is still live. So as of February 26, 2025, the factory's only been, and that's as of last month, that factory since 1968 has only been in compliance one time. One time. So for all the testing, the checkups, everything else like that, one time, right? Here's an interesting one here. Now this one too. One day in November of 2017, chlorophene was detected at a rate 755 times the EPA guideline, or the EPA, the restriction they had, 755 times. And so the company says, well, we've met the threshold. We cut our emissions down by 85%. There's also no way to verify that. They just kind of investigated themselves. It's kind of like when the police kill somebody and then they do an internal investigation. We investigated ourselves and we found we did nothing wrong, right? Same kind of thing. And so even if the company did everything right, let's say they're no longer releasing the toxins into the water, into the air, into the soil, into everything. What does that do for the people that have been there since 1968? That does nothing for them, because now that ends the conversation of compensation. That ends the conversation of even punitive damages. And so there was a woman, Roxanne, I didn't get her last name, but I was watching her interview. Her entire family has died. Every last member. She's the last one left. And they all died from cancer. Every last one. Imagine that. Imagine what happens when it's your turn for the funeral. There's not even nobody to show up. You don't got no cousins and nobody that can roll on the floor at your funeral because everybody's gone already. Right? That's kind of the space that we're in when we're talking about this era of deregulation. And this is all for profits, right? It's profits, it's gatekeeping, it's cementing, it's all the things that are going to make super wealthy people even more wealthy. With less regulation, companies can cut corners for bigger profits. And that's pretty much what's happening. There's a few other things I wanted to read with this. And again, this is an area that's disproportionately African-American, and it's affecting them. That's the wildest part for me. Let me see here. And it doesn't stop there, because there's so much, even with the EPA, right? U.S. Supreme Court just ruled today, now this was a few days ago, EPA cannot order cities to maintain acceptable water quality standards by limiting the discharge, usually sewage. Discharge, you need to think of what comes out of your toilets, what comes out of your bathroom sink. That's what's going into, when we're talking about the reservoirs, the rivers, everything like that. Let me see. EPA cannot order cities to maintain acceptable water quality standards by limiting the discharge, usually sewage, that they dump onto nearby bodies of water like oceans and bays. The four women justices dissenting. The only people, it was a 5-4. The only people who were like, no, y'all can't dump all the scrap in the water were the women that were on the Supreme Court. The men said, doesn't matter. Profits over lives, right? That's where we're at. And so the other thing to also take note of, most of the agencies that are being hit the hardest as far as Doge and the waste and the fraud that they're allegedly getting. And my question is, if there's so much fraud and so much waste, how come nobody has been charged? How come nobody has been arrested? And how come the numbers still don't match up? And why is it that for all of the savings that Doge claimed to have, made, the majority of it has been over-exaggerated and the numbers still don't add up? I'm just like, y'all be out here just lying. Out here just lying, right? The Department of Government Efficiency, Joel, says it has cut $115 billion in government funding so far. Unfortunately, the figures don't stack up. An article from Fortune Center suggested that the $115 billion number was misleading and said Doge's claims have historically included inaccuracies and inflated numbers, stoking criticism for its chaotic approach and lack of government expertise. The article noted how Doge deleted several contracts from its wall of recipients after media reports undermined their legitimacy, and described Doge's website as littered with errors. It also quoted an executive partner with Madison Dearborn Partners who believed the total savings were overstated by up to 80%. So all these people who have been fired and these grants that have been canceled, this has given no savings. As a matter of fact, the numbers just came out and actually said that in February of 2025, more was actually spent by the federal government than this time last year for all of this fraud that they're apparently cutting, right? I'll come back to that in a second. Lord, it makes sense. But I will say this. The other thing, too, with the Supreme Court now saying the EPA has no authority to regulate the water that we drink and utilize and bathe with, this is starting to set precedents for what's going to happen with a lot of these other cases that come before the Supreme Court, where, again, profits have taken priority over everything, right? There's going to be a lot of super wealthy people that get very, very, very rich. They are going to get, any and everything they want under the sun because you got the right people in office. And we've said this before. This is why when people fought me, when I kept saying, I know some of y'all went crazy over who the other candidate was, but my point was cause and effect. It's not just about the person running, but who is going to be in their cabinet, who's going to be on their team, and what is it that they are going to push. And so we now have a country being run by a bunch of businessmen and women who are looking to line their pockets, not yours. But hope it was worth it. But it goes even deeper than that. And the other issue is, because we have so many people, especially with Doge, that are coming in this state, they don't know what it is they're doing, what it is they're cutting. I just saw, I wanted to read that article too. The piece with the trees, that got me going too. I said, y'all are just so stupid. I want to read this piece too, and then I'll take a break and read some comments because we have so much. I've been rambling. We'll be here all day. Okay. $75 million was awarded to plant trees in places that badly need them. An anti-DEI push, that's over. By the way, this is why I said, do not get behind, because there's a lot of content creators out here that claim to be the face of black politics, this, that, and the third, but I'm noticing that they're compliant and perfectly fine with all the things that are happening and trying to claim that none of this affects us. All of this does. If there are people who are telling you that all of this stuff that's happening doesn't matter and we going to be good, no. They are leading you into some nonsense. And it's because they recognize that their audience, most of the time, they usually have an audience that's majority white, most of the time, or again, their main MO is not about a collective experience. It's about individuality and profits and everything at the expense of the collective. So be careful with who y'all are running behind, because I keep seeing a whole lot of folks, including that fool who was like, I never heard black people say, ooh, we need a Department of Education. I was like, I was going to be messy and make a whole video and just drag that person. But I said, you know what? It's not even worth giving energy to. Anyway, getting to my article. $75 million was awarded to plant trees in places that badly need them. An anti-DEI push. That's over. Arthur Johnson has lived in New Orleans. We in Louisiana again. New Orleans lower Ninth Ward for nearly 3 decades, long enough to appreciate the trees that filter pollution from the big ships traveling the nearby Mississippi River, and that offer shade on sweltering summer days. When Hurricane Katrina roared through 2 decades ago, it wiped out nearly 200,000 trees across the city, including many in Johnson's neighborhood and several in his own yard. The city has struggled ever since to restore its tree canopy. Those efforts were set back by the U.S. Forest Service. That group has also been chopped down too, right? Doge. And so the U.S. Forest Service is almost out the door. Those efforts will be set back by the U.S. Forest Service's decision in mid-February to terminate a $75 million grant to the Arbor Day Foundation, which was working to plant trees in neighborhoods that might not otherwise be able to afford them. The program is the latest victim by a drive of President Donald Trump's administrations against environmental justice initiatives. We had a conversation about that too. Anything that was supposed to make life better for folks that ain't white is cut. All right. In New Orleans, part of the money was going to the environmental group Sustaining Our Urban Landscape, also known as SOUL, which has planted more than 1,600 trees in the historically black community, but now has paused plans for another 900. Those are trees that largely low-income residents otherwise couldn't afford to plant and maintain, said 71-year-old Johnson, who runs a local nonprofit. The Lower Ninth Ward Center for Sustainable Engagement and Development that has helped SOUL with its work and done some tree planting of its own in the area. You're not just cutting out the tree, the environment. You're not just cutting out the tree, the environment with such cuts, said Johnson. If those trees aren't replaced and more aren't continually added, it really takes a toll on the sustainability of the Lower Ninth Ward and its community. The benefits of trees are vast. They capture stormwater and replenish groundwater. They help clean the air in polluted areas, improve mental health, and cool air and surfaces of the built environment, especially during heat waves that are growing more and more intense and frequent with climate change. One study by the UCLA Luskin Center found that shade can reduce heat stress on the human body from 25 to 35% throughout the day. And much research shows that low income and communities of color have fewer trees and are hotter than better off neighborhoods. The Arbor Days Fund grant was part of former President Joe Biden's signature climate law, the Inflation Reduction Act, which sent $1.5 billion to Forest Service's Urban and Community Forestry Program. In a February 14th email canceling the grant, the Forest Service wrote that the award no longer effectuates agency priorities regarding diversity. Remember, all of these agencies have now been taken over by somebody who has no correlation to what that agency's mission initially was to begin with, right? No longer effectuates the agency's priorities regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion programs and activities. But Dan Lamb, the Arbor Day Foundation's chief executive, said the projects weren't just going to serve disadvantaged people. They were going to benefit every member of the community, he said. In total, 105 nonprofits, municipalities, and indigenous organizations from Alaska to Florida to Maine have lost funding for critical environmental projects, the foundation said. The Forest Service didn't say if other recipients of the $1.5 billion forestry investment also had grants terminated. In a statement, its parent agency, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, said the agency was following directions to comply with Trump's executive orders. Now, I want to go a little bit deeper than that. Because one of the things that we've talked about as well, right? When we talk about urban landscape, when we talk about the fact that when you go to a lot of metropolitan cities, especially areas that were once redlined, when we're talking temperatures in these areas tend to be a lot higher, again, because there's no green space, there's less trees. A lot of times there's these high buildings, metal glass, and what you call the street tarmac. And so because of that, when that heat just beams down, the heat has nowhere to get filtered or escape, and it just kind of sits and saturates. So you have that issue. And the numbers have also shown it plays a role in an effect with the amount of people who end up having asthma or developing asthma over time, right? And when I talk about just the lack of research, this is how stupid people are, right? So many times people get into these agencies, and because they're on such a power trip, they just do any and everything. Remember the conversation about male versus female trees, right? Male trees tend to not bear fruit. They more so just give out a lot of pollen. Female trees tend to bear seeds, bear, fruit and everything like that. And so for a lot of these, what I would say projects that took place throughout a lot of metropolitan cities, as far as like planting trees, most of the time, a lot of the people in charge chose to only plant male trees, mainly because they felt like if we plant female trees, then you got to clean up the fruit that falls off the tree, and it's going to be slimy. It's just an eyesore. So let's just plant nothing but male trees up and down all these boulevards, because at least we won't have to pick up rotting fruit. So now we're wondering why allergies have become more intense over time. And we're wondering why, the numbers when it comes to just allergens in the air have become so extreme in modern times, especially with the elements of climate change. And just because, again, I'm somebody who likes to cite my sources here, some of the places that you can look at with regard to just even the research on how trees affect us and how bad policy and racism has played a role into even what happens with them just planting some freaking trees, right? You can check out the Asthma and Allergy Foundation of America, AAFA. That's run by Kenneth Mendez. You can check out the American Academy of Allergy, Asthma, and Immunology. You can check out the study on urban tree pollen allergy riskscapes by Quebec Health and Forestry researchers. You can check out, I would say the Department of Agriculture, but they've been compromised. University of Georgia College of Agriculture, Agricultural and Environmental Sciences, and Ohio State University's College of Food, Agricultural, and Environmental Sciences. All of these places all specifically have done research about just the trees and what has happened, right? Man, it's a mess out here. It's hot out here in these streets. Is there anything else I wanted to share while I was at it? I'll come back to that. Let me take a break really quick, and then we're going to go through some comments, and because there's a whole bunch of people who have left comments and I have not got a chance to get to them all. So let me get to you guys. Calvin, am I in Texas? No, I am not in Texas. But I was last week. Let me see. What up, Jasmine Jones? They also use legitimate cases, but frame them as frivolous in order to get us to agree with the reform. Mm-hmm. The McDonald's hot coffee case was a prime example when you learn all the facts. It was a legit case. And yeah, they tried to paint it as just this lady who was just trying to get over it, and she was too dumb to read that the coffee was hot. Like, they do so much. And that's why you notice, thank you, always me. That's why Elon always keeps talking about fraud, waste. As they're cutting and firing all these people, his go-to word is fraud and waste every single time. And it's almost this way of kind of painting it like there's all this sabotage and shenanigans happening behind the scenes, and it's your money that's being affected. When in reality, you're watching Elon, who at the moment has received $38 billion in government payouts and contracts, and he will get a whole lot more because he has more contracts coming down the line. But they try to, I just need people to not do surface level politics. Can we come out of the era of surface level politics? Right? That's where I want us to get. Because once people dig a little bit deeper, half the problems we're living through we won't have to deal with because collectively people will be a little bit more informed. Man. CFPB being set up after the 08 financial crisis and now is being gutted while the economy is on shaky ground is very telling, and a lot is going to get worse. Yeah, I mean, listen, this is a rich man's world right now. Everything for what they got going. Somebody says, still bumping your song. Which one? The one I did the music video for? I don't know. I have 4 albums. I don't know which song you're talking about, but thank you. Let's see. They absolutely want no oversight overall. Exactly. Man, let me see here. Somebody said black people have no real collective allies in this country. We don't. We don't. You have people who mean well, but when it's all said and done, that anti-blackness is always going to come in when it's time. What up, Wendy Johnson? Said, hey, everyone, my first live at Calvin. Wendy Johnson said, I'm buying a condo, and the mortgage payment is going to be $1,300. Well, for DC, that would be a really great rate. I don't know where you live, but I would love to only pay 13. Let's see. Glam God said, this is the type of stuff RFK should be looking into, real health improvements. And what happened with Flint? Well, we know with Flint, the people who initially were going to be indicted and charged, all that was thrown out. I will also say the Biden administration, one of the initiatives they had was the Clean Piping Administration, where they were going to go and try to replace every lead pipe in this country, not just in Flint, but nationwide. And one of the things that they signed into policy in February of 2024 was giving every major metropolitan city about 8, 9, 10 more years to be in compliance with getting rid of all of their lead pipes. Now, I don't know if that's still a thing. I don't know if the Trump administration decided, no, we're getting rid of that too. I don't know. But that would definitely be something that would have helped Flint. Right? Brown Sugar said, I grew up in Cancer Alley in the 80s. My uncle and godfather died of cancer in the 90s. Yeah, it's crazy. Again, this factory, and that's just one factory. That's not the only one there. But the factory that we're highlighting, as far as the Dinka, whatever it was called, that's run by a rapper or whatever, that's been there since 1968. So you have to think of the decades and the generations of all the toxins that are in the air that's embedded in the soil. And the fact that there's a school right smack next to the factory with 400 students that go there every day. And they play, and think about it, the kids are playing at recess and running. You know, when you run and jump, you breathe a little bit more aggressively. You're really inhaling all the chemicals, right? They're doing PE and everything else, and they got band and got the. Well, I don't know. They cut the music out of school, so I don't even know if they got music programs anymore. And the school choir, like all of that. You got to look at generations of that happening. That's wild. Can we talk about how dumb and childish Trump's press secretary is? Literally a high school dumb blonde. She makes the Kaylee girl look like she was Michelle Obama. Nobody in his cabinet has credibility with me. Every last one of them, to me, it's like the lowest of low people you could find put in charge of stuff. I'm just like, man, jeez, make it make sense. Imagine how much money America could save by making the rich pay their taxes. We just spent money sending Trump to the Super Bowl. And we just, look, he was on the White House lawn getting a Tesla because the Tesla stock is crashing. And then Elon donated $100 million. I was like, where do I live? Why does everything have to happen in my lifetime? Like, I don't want to live through any more pivotal moments in society. Can it just be quiet for a while? Like, I just like to grow old peacefully, make my little music here and there, and, start a family, have a few kids, and become somebody's grandparent at some point, and have a lake house. That's all I ask for, right? But you got to live through recessions and wars, and God, make it make sense. Somebody said, please drag whoever said that. Sadly, I need something to make me feel better with the BS going on right now. See, the issue I have with, y'all know I always be cooking boys walking all the time, but, I don't want to start giving, most of these people have bigger platforms than me anyway, but it's I feel like if I give them space for my little rants here and there, it just gives them more exposure. And then somebody will go, man, let me see what they talk about. And they go look and they be like, ooh, actually, I agree. And then it's like they get bigger and bigger. But there are some idiots out there that are dry. Whew, man, it's taking everything in me to like stay centered and focus on what I need to like focus on and not jump into every argument. Because again, a lot of them do this because it's profit. Again, like I said, the ones who have majority white audiences, they are not for black anything. And I noticed one time, there was a guy out here in DC, and I've said too, even as black folks, we don't need to jump into every battle. Like I always said, white folks don't need our help being terrible people. So even with all this immigration stuff, let us not jump into the space of over here trying to help break up families. Look, they already voted for that nonsense. They're going to get whatever comes with them. We don't got to help that out. But anyway, there was this clip of this black owner. He owned like a business or something, but he decided to go viral because he recorded himself chewing out the Uber Eats driver because the Uber Eats driver didn't speak good enough English. So he wanted to record himself yelling at the man to speak English, right? And of course, it pisses people off. I forgot, I think he gets a simple assault charge and some other crazy stuff. And all I remember tweeting, I was saying, like, understand that the way that system works, you still are living under it. So you should not be jumping the gun to try to, enforce the nonsense because you will still be collateral. So anyway, some goofy MFer shows up in my little comments like, oh, what is this? You trying to stop a black man from having this business? And I was like, what are you talking about? First of all, if we're going to have that conversation, that Uber driver, one, you didn't know if that person was undocumented or not. Doesn't matter. But the point is, they came to your business, right? You're getting their dollar. They're supporting you. They're going and delivering whatever food to whoever and if your food is good enough, they'll come back. And the economy is a cycle. Anyway, you're sabotaging your own business because you wanted a viral moment. And then, again, it was rooted in some nonsense. The guy didn't really do nothing to you. He just showed up with the little, if you ever do Uber Eats or, sometimes they just come, they show you the thing, give them the pin, and they bounce. He decided to have a moment, and just it was unnecessary. Like everything, we don't got to jump into everything. But anyway, this guy wanted to argue me down, and I noticed like every person in the comments, because the thing was, the charge that he got had nothing to do with the Uber Eats thing. He got in trouble for some other stuff because he pulled out a knife on somebody in like a street fight. That was what the charge was about, and they just kind of the story went viral when that came in. So that was what I was responding to. Anyway, so I'm noticing all these people are like chewing me out in the comments. So I started just clicking these profiles. All these profiles are white men. I was like, why are y'all in this conversation? And then I go to this person. I'm like, oh. So I look at their little platform. I'm like, okay. Their pinned little tweet at the time was like, thank you, Elon Musk. I was like, oh, some Negro in Baltimore done sold us out for some nonsense. And his whole audience was white. It's like, get it together, people. Anyway. Nonsense. I don't want to hear no pro-black nothing from somebody who, if the collective is not your following, you're not working for the collective. You're working for yourself at the expense of the collective by appeasing the white collective for a check. Cut the crap. Anyway. So yeah, I didn't feel like dragging that. Well, that person, I forgot who their name was, but the person I'm thinking about, I got their name fresh on my, it's fresh in my mind. Somebody said, see, relax. I know it's a lot. Please, it's not as bad as it seems. You can move right to it. Respectfully, it is as bad as it seems. I just am not somebody who like overreacts, but this heroin is not good. It's going to take years to remedy a lot of what's happening. And I think too, and one of the reasons why I went so hard as I did during the election season was I kept saying you really have to start thinking about the generation that comes after us and our grandparents, right? One of the silly arguments I keep hearing too, and this goes back to my conversation with people who, again, surface level politics. And this is not towards you, by the way. This is just in general. Let me segue to it anyway. I keep seeing so many people who, I love that people are finally paying attention, but it's like people have paid attention, but to not enough stuff yet, or they don't know what they don't know. And then they start creating platforms and start using talking points that we've already, like I'm still hearing the talking point, black people got $2 trillion buying power. I'm like, no, we don't. Yes, there's $2 trillion, but that's the mortgage, that's rent, that's grandma's medical bills, that's student loan debt, that's credit card debt, that's daycare, that's the grocery bill. We don't have $2 trillion to play with. That's everything we have. And so when people are like, we got $2 trillion, we can, no, we don't. We don't have that, right? Even when I hear people say, well, why don't we build our own? We did that many, many times. And we've seen, I'm gonna come back to it. I'm gonna pause because remind me to come back to that. I want to stay on point. But yeah, it is as bad as it seems, honestly. And it will only get worse, especially when we're talking healthcare right now. It doesn't seem that bad because we're not feeling the effects yet. Give it some time. Let this Department of Education go under. We're going to really see some effects. Let what's left of the Affordable Care Act get gutted. Let insurance companies be able to jump back in and do whatever they want. Let them go ahead and get rid of those pre-existing conditions and watch things start to change. Let them continue to cancel, because again, we've seen the cancer research canceled, HIV research gutted and canceled. Let them stop giving away something like PrEP for free. Right? If you're not familiar, PrEP is like something people can take to prevent HIV, right? Or even DoxyPrep. I think DoxyPrep might be free too. That's what people can take if they feel that they may have possibly contracted something, and if they take it within 72 hours, most of the time it will fight against things like gonorrhea, syphilis, things like that. Let those things no longer be free, right? We're going to start seeing some changes. Anyway, speaking of Department of Education, let's just go ahead and go to them too while I'm at it. Lord, help me to hold out. So one of the things that's happening, because speaking of that same content creator, I was like, I ain't never heard black people say we need the Department of Education. Okay, yeah. Well, you was telling everybody to spend all your money on this nonsense, right? I do want to just kind of clear up some things of what the Department of Education does, right? How does the federal government support education? Multiple federal agencies provide funding to support students of all ages. Despite having education in its title, the Department of Education is just one. By the way, it's one of the smallest agencies as well. So when they always talk about, it's draining the economy, it's not. It's like 2% of the federal budget. It's really nothing, right? Which is why when they laid off like 1,800 people last week, that was half of the department. It's not a very large department. Let me see. So despite having education in its title, the Department of Education is just one federal entity supporting students of all ages who, we should add. Other agencies, including the Department of the Interior, the Department of Agriculture, and even the VA, support students primarily with funding or specialized programs. What does the Department of Education do? What doesn't it do? According to the Department of Education, according to the Education Department, education is primarily a local and state responsibility rather than a federal one. The department does not mandate curriculum, because they kind of said that to the indoctrination. It's fraud, waste, and indoctrination. They don't even do anything with the curriculum. And if you follow me long enough, we went through that entire chain of command of how even our textbooks are purchased at a state level, and why McGraw-Hill can make the same history book and it be different in all different states. California will have a version of the book. Texas will have a different version of the book. I'll have to go and find that video, but we've had that conversation a few times. The department is also fairly hands-off when it comes to elementary and secondary education, which mostly is funded by local governments. Meanwhile, state governments support higher education, but the Education Department does supply funding for K-12 students, college students, and other adults through grants and program funding. How do elementary and secondary schools use Education Department funding? The Education Department primarily funds grades K-12 through programs that support economically disadvantaged school systems. Mainly every school system in a major metropolitan city, school systems in rural areas, school systems in predominantly Black areas, and areas that are working class. Title I provides funding for children from low-income families. The funding is allocated to the state and local education agencies based on census poverty estimates. This is why it was so important that census did not get cut down early in 2020 when Trump's administration decided we're going to end it a bit early. Again, that survey of census determines where the needs are. And again, they decided to bum rush and cut the program down faster so they can be finished with it. So the numbers from the 2020 census are wrong. And when we're talking about where money is being allocated, people are already feeling the end result of not being adequately represented. Anyway, Title I provides funding for children from low-income families. This funding is allocated to state and local agencies based on census poverty estimates. In 2023, these funds amounted to over $18 billion. Annual funding to state and local governments supports federal education programs to meet the needs of children with disabilities. In 2023, it was nearly $15 billion. School improvement programs, which amount to nearly $6 billion each year, award grants to schools for initiatives to improve education outcomes such as retention and educational program completion. In addition, funding the National Center for Education Statistics, an agency within the department, gathers and reports data on K-12 education institutions so schools and researchers can better analyze enrollment, finances, and performance metrics between schools and districts. What role does the Education Department play in funding higher education? The ED administers 2 programs to support college students. Pell Grants, $30 billion, people, and Federal Student Loan Program. Pell Grants provide assistance to college students based on their family's ability to pay. The maximum amount for a student in the 2024 to 2025 school year is $7,395. In a typical year, Pell Grant funding totals around $30 billion. The majority of the kids that I worked with that came out of my center, if they did not get full-ride scholarships or they didn't get a lot of assistance, most of the way that they were able to pay for school was through Pell Grants. The federal student loan program subsidizes students by offering more generous loan terms than they would receive in the private loan market, including income-driven repayment plans, scheduled debt forgiveness, lower interest rates, and deferred payments. Most education department funding is for financial aid. Fiscal year expenses for the Department of Education sub-agencies. All right, let's just go through the numbers. So for fiscal year 2024, federal student aid accounted for $160 billion. Elementary and secondary education accounted for $82.9 billion. Office of Special Education and Rehabilitative Services, $20.6 billion. Office of Post-Secondary Education, $3.5 billion. Office of Vocational and Adult Education, $2.1 billion. Office of Innovation and Improvement, $1.1 billion. Office of English Language Acquisition, $912 million. Institute of Education / Sciences, $786 million. Department of Management, $691 million, and then $58 million spent on others. Student debt relief led to higher federal education spending in fiscal year 2022. Spending in 2023 decreased following the Supreme Court decisions to overturn the Biden administration's student loan forgiveness plan. Therefore, the department's share of the federal budget, which historically has been around 2%, temporarily increased to 10% in 2022 before returning to 4% in 2024. What else does the Department of Education do? Offer special education and rehabilitative services, supports disabled adults by giving states vocational rehabilitation grants. These grants match state vocational rehabilitation agency funds to help people with disabilities find jobs. Typically, grants total around $4 billion a year. If you follow my podcast, remember I used to always talk about my cousin Michaela, who had Prader-Willi syndrome. So when Michaela has gone on to glory, but one of the things that helped her coming out of high school at 21, because she was not fully able to maneuver like everybody else because there were some things that were different than her, those very programs helped her to get a job at, of all places, Target. But at the time, it was something that helped her to get a job. And because she was somebody who needed additional assistance, those funds would pay for that specialist that would also still be with her on site while she was working. Now, unfortunately, she passed. But, like these programs help so many different people for various things. What federal education programs exist outside of the education department? We'll talk about that. We don't need all that. But anyway, with all that, long story short, there's a whole bunch of things that benefit. And also, when we're talking schools that are in states that receive a lot of federal funding, understand that if the Department of Education is gone, right, there's going to be a lot of states that cannot afford to publicly educate all of their students because there's not enough money in the budget. And that's going to be a serious problem. Even when we're talking about FAFSA, that's going to affect who can take out what, who can even get into schools. And even with FAFSA, understand, even if you get a full ride to a college, you still have to fill out FAFSA in order to get your scholarship, right? So you have all those different things taking place. Now, we have 49.6 million kids in K through 12. If you follow me long enough, the main thing that I've said is the goal has always been to privatize education, because think about it. If you have nearly 50 million people who need a K through 12 education and you can charge them for it, there are trillions to be made. Trillions. And so that's why they've really pushed this whole school choice and private voucher narrative and everything else like that. But one of the things that people need to understand is that the majority of the vouchers have not gone to working and middle class families. They've actually gone to the super wealthy. So let's go to the numbers. Most voucher recipients are wealthy families who never even attended public schools. Before 2022, and just to give some context of what I'm talking about, most of our state schools are funded through property taxes, right? You get your house, you pay your property taxes. The property taxes go into that pool, that go into the state pool, that will determine how much goes to each, district based on the region where people live. And the amount of money that's in the property taxes will determine what funds different schools. Now, the discrepancy with that, I will say, is depending on how wealthy your zip code is, will depend on how good your schools are. If there's not a lot of money in your zip code, there's not a lot of money to go to the schools, right? So anyway, there's property taxes with that. When you pull your child out of public school, their tax dollars go to that, or they go out of the system, right? And so one of the laws that they changed in the past, tax dollars cannot fund private schools. That's kind of becoming something that's been gutted. Laws have changed. And now what's happening is when it comes to this conversation of school choice, Betsy DeVos, who was our former Secretary of Education, who also has never even been to a public school and grew up super, super rich, never been to a public college, never even had to work, right? Worked to ensure that she could gut and destroy as much of our public education as she could while she was in there for her terms. But with all that being said, they pushed and ran the idea of school choice, and they tried to paint it as, oh, parents want a choice to go to good schools and not go to the schools with those kids. That's really what they were saying without saying it. And so, yeah, here comes this voucher program. And yeah, parents can get vouchers and they can go to all these really great schools, when in reality, the vouchers really aren't even for most working class, middle class families. It's for rich folks. Anyway, before 2022, many private school voucher programs were sold to the public as an opportunity for low-income students to escape public schools. Voucher programs often limited participation to families with low incomes and also generally required children who previously had attended public schools. This is no longer the case. Many states now operate universal voucher programs that allow virtually every student in the state, regardless of their family's income, whether their local public school is high performing, whether they have only attended private school, or any other factor, to get taxpayer-funded voucher to pay tuition at a private school. As a result, most recipients of private school vouchers and universal programs are wealthy families whose children have never attended public schools in the first place. These wealthy families can afford to pay for private school tuition without help from taxpayers in the form of a voucher. Private school vouchers are simply a way for wealthy families to get a taxpayer-funded discount on their private school tuition, and our public schools, which educate 90% of the nation's students, pay the price. Like I said, every time you pull a kid out of the public school, the money leaves that district for each child, right? And the cost for each child nationwide ranges between about $6,500 and $8,500 per pupil. So it just depends on what happens in the state. But every time a kid leaves, that's $6,500 to $8,500 pulled out of the resources for that school. And then when we have programs like a No Child Left Behind from the Bush era, again, the MO for that program was by December of 2014, I think it was like 85 to 90% of kids would be proficient in reading and math. That never happened. But as a result of the program, one of the things that they would do is every time these schools would do these standardized tests, if the numbers did not match up to what was supposed to be the expectation as far as requirements and standards, then the districts and the schools would continue to lose funding, which was really backwards. So if you have a school that's not performing very well, now remember, let's say they get $300 million a year from the state, when they do this standardized test, if the students have not met the requirement, that means next year you're not getting $300 million. Maybe you're getting 260, but you're still required to still meet that same standard with only 260 now. You couldn't do it with 300 million. Now you only got 260, and they're talking about make it enough, right? Next Friday, make it enough, right? So you have that. If the school underperforms even more as a result of not having funding, because again, if you cut $40 million out the budget, now you got to fire teachers, you got to get rid of specialists, you might have to cut some after-school programs, you might have to cut music, you might have to cut some things. There's all kind of cuts. School probably isn't going to do as well. They do the standard test again, still don't meet the requirements. What happens? Well, got to lose some more funding, right? And so it starts to get to a threshold where eventually some of these districts will lose so much funding that now you start to see all the charter schools pop up and all the other schools pop up because so much has been pulled out of the state funding and dropped off into other locations that the public school system is literally deteriorating, falling apart. And the only people that are still left in it are people who can't afford to get out. And then the other schools that, are getting a nice chunk of the pie or getting the vouchers or whatever, they have lottery systems. And these are not schools you can just walk into, right? And so there's so much to be said. I don't know why I didn't just read the article. I'm over here. I could just read the article, but y'all know I got to just expound, right? Vouchers are the reverse Robin Hood of education. They take educational opportunities from the poor and the working class in order to give more advantages to the rich. Here are several examples. Arkansas. According to the Arkansas Department of Education, 95% of the participants in the state's universal voucher program have never attended public schools before receiving a voucher. Florida. When Florida expanded its voucher program to all students in 2023, 122,895 new students signed up to get vouchers. Only 13% of those students had ever previously attended public schools. 69% were already attending private schools, and the remaining students were entering private kindergarten. Imagine that, private kindergarten. You got some money, you go private kindergarten, right? Man. All you do in kindergarten is take a nap in color, but no, they want the private one. Okay. Of the new students, 44% are from households that made $120,000 or more per year, more than double the median household income in the state. Only 30% are from families that make less than $55,000 per year. Arizona. Researchers found that the use of vouchers in Arizona is highest in affluent school districts and lowest in poor school districts. For example, more than half of the voucher students came from the wealthiest quarter of zip codes in the state, with median incomes ranging from $81,000 to $178,000. Most of those students have never attended public schools. More than 50% of Arizona voucher spending for 2024 is made up of newly incurred costs for students who were previously enrolled in private school, homeschooled, or hadn't yet started kindergarten before getting the voucher. I'll do 3 more because we ain't gonna go through all 50 states. We're already almost at 11 o'clock. All right. Most students, this is Indiana. Most students in Indiana's voucher program come from well-off families. During the 2022-2023 school year, voucher recipients were more likely to come from families that have made more than $100,000 per year than families that made less than $50,000 per year. Ohio. Since Ohio expanded its voucher program to wealthy families, the percentage of low-income students using vouchers in Cleveland fell from 35% to 7%. Now, most Ohio voucher students did not attend public schools before they took the voucher. The percentage of voucher students statewide who already attended a private school in the year prior jumped from 7% in 2019 to almost 55% in 2023. Last one I'll do is Iowa. State-provided data shows that about 2/3 of students receiving vouchers in Iowa's new statewide program were already attending private schools before getting taxpayer money for tuition. Only about 13% of voucher recipients had ever even previously attended public school. So even with this whole school choice, which again, that's one of the reasons why they're gutting and getting rid of the Department of Education, pushing the idea of school choice with these vouchers. Long story short, if you don't have money, good luck. That's where we're at. If you ain't got no money, good luck. Figure it out. That's pretty much what they've told us. And again, this is also going to become an issue when it comes to protections, when it comes to accessibility, when it comes to special ed. Private schools are not mandated to serve kids that are special needs. Private schools are not mandated to serve kids that have any kind of cognitive issues, right? We already talked about the numbers in the research when it comes to Black children that are disproportionately put in remedial courses. But understand, with a lot of charter schools, a lot of times when they're trying to meet certain thresholds of accolades and accomplishments, they have no problem kicking kids that underperform out of their program. And so it's a lot going on. So I need folks to, be aware of everything that's happening. Okay, let me read some comments here. I apologize that I haven't been able to get to as many comments as I would like to tonight. All right, chat, where are we going with this? Okay, here we go. My chat was freezing. All right. So much to be said. Somebody said, this is crazy. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Crazy times. They want us to suffer. Somebody said, what kind of country is this? This country is a business, and we're learning it the hard way. They literally don't care about us. They want to force unwanted or unhealthy births on women and families, but remove regulations on drinking water for the public. That's right. You want to criminalize women's choice to carry a pregnancy to term or not, but at the same time, you don't give resources for people to raise a family. You want to punish everybody for having too many kids, and it's like too much going on. Too much. You get punished for food. You get punished for everything. Let's see. Somebody said they remember the article about the male trees. Somebody said they like I Want. That's my song with the video, I Want. Yeah, we're doing plans to shoot our next video soon, so I'm excited about that. It won't be till the spring. Well, I guess we're almost in spring. Somebody said I need to be with... I'm thinking of moving to Atlanta. At this point, I need to be with my Black folks. I'm somebody who, I got to live with the collective, right? There's only so many places I'm going to go. I got to go where we're at least a strong segment of the population. So for me, and plus I want to still be like in a metropolitan city, so that kind of limits where I can go. Pretty much my options are like DC Metro, Chicago, Atlanta, Houston. New York is a great option. New York is actually a really, really, really serious possibility. So there's so many places I'm gonna go. I don't want to be a speck of pepper in a bowl of salt. That's what I grew up around. I never want to experience that again. Right? I saw this nerd, Lars. Doge marked a hormone study on mice and called it a transgender study, which was so stupid because the study was all about like genetics and how to cure diseases properly. And so like doing different genetic testing and trying to shift different things within the mice to see what they respond to well or what they don't respond to well when it comes to different diseases and everything. They saw trans in the term and got rid of the program. I'm like, y'all are so stupid. That was cancer research. Lord, like, man, make it make sense. These people are so dumb. That's my point. Like, They don't even know what they're doing. Y'all got the dumbest people in charge. That's the part that's getting me. Like, man. Make it make sense. Look, soon it's gonna be so bad you're gonna be walking in the store. It's gonna be like a playlist in the store can't play any black music. That's DEI. Y'all gonna be hearing nothing but Brooks and Dunn at Walmart. All right. Oh, y'all said y'all like the new setup. It's cool for now. I'm not finished with it. We're gonna figure it out. I'm still gonna test some things out, but no, it's great. It's great. Somebody saying black kids are disproportionately put in special ed too. I did a video on standardized testing years ago, I think, where we talked about that. And we even talked about the whole gifted program and how that was a way to, again, once we integrated the schools and they started doing the mandatory busing, white folks still needed a way to make sure that their kids were not in the same classrooms with us. And here comes the gifted program, right? Okay, I'm gonna keep going, guys, because I have so many topics we gotta cover, y'all. Man, this is what happens when you take too long in between lives. All right, I'm gonna zip through some of this Doge crap because I'm tired of talking about them. But like we said, the Doge staying in the federal government is fraud and waste and all the stuff they're cutting. So they're cutting cancer research and HIV research and education and consumer protections and all that other stuff and fraud this and fraud that. Bunch of nonsense. And they keep trying to claim, oh well, it's because the federal government is just so expensive and it's weighing us down. Understand, payroll for every federal employee, that's all, with 2 or 3 million of them, is 4.3% of the budget. 4.3%, right? That's $336 billion a year. Now, mind you, we just watched them pass this new tax cut for the rich, where they have to figure out how to come up with $880 billion. And their way of doing it was say, we'll just cut Medicaid, right? Make it make sense. And like we said, Elon alone is already getting he's gotten $38 billion out of government contracts. And there will be more because of the air traffic control deal that he's made. He also is in talks with pretty much taking over internet. Not like the internet that we use with the broadband, but satellite internet through that damn, what is it, the something link, space link, whatever stupid program he got, right? Where that would pretty much manage all of the internet for you. And that conversation is coming from Biden administration made it their goal to ensure that internet was available everywhere in the United States. There's lots of segments of the country that still don't necessarily have internet because it's so rural, it's so hard to get out there. There's not a lot of the fiber cords and stuff to get there, but satellite can possibly do it. So again, this current administration kind of gutted some of the Joe Biden stuff, and that was out of the infrastructure bill and said, oh, well, Elon's got it. He'll do his thing. Now, the problem with the whole satellite internet is that it's not under the same regulatory rules as the internet that you and I use, that is, through the broadband, all that kind of stuff. And so the conversation of censorship, the conversation of being monitored is another conversation. Just things to think about. We also know that Elon has also suggested that we get rid of Social Security. This is something they bring up Republicans, for some reason, they love to paint the narrative of Social Security being something that's hard on the budget. Social Security is the money we paid into. It's not coming out of thin air. The money that is in Social Security is the money we paid into it. Every time you get your paycheck and there's that segment that comes out of it, that Social Security tax, that's what it's for, right? So I don't know why they keep trying to claim that. He was saying something, there's fraud in Social Security. I'm like, here we go. Now, when we're talking about the Social Security payouts, they try to paint the narrative that a whole bunch of dead people are getting Social Security checks. Understand that as soon as somebody dies, that's one of the first things that takes place with the death certificate and the funeral homes and all that other stuff. All that stuff that's the first thing that's cut off. But when we're talking accuracy, the Social Security Department has an accuracy rate of 99.8%. There's not really a whole lot of slip-ups when it comes to accidental checks being given out. Okay, their rate of 99.8% is a whole lot better than that 80% that Doge got wrong with the numbers as far as what they thought they were saving, right? And so they're doing anything. And so it just goes to show, like, when it comes to the GOP, I just feel like they have just lost their way. I was looking at what the GOP platform was in 1956. Get this. Now, this is when Eisenhower was running. Okay, 1956 Republican Party platform. Assistance to low-income communities. Protect Social Security. Provide asylum to refugees. Boy, if they could look in the mirror today. Extend the minimum wage, the thing they have fought against forever and a day. Improve unemployment benefits to cover more people. You're still fighting with that, right? You lose your job and they give you what, $300-$400 a week, which is not really a lot of money. Strengthen labor law so workers can join unions. Boy, equal pay regardless of sex. That was the Republican platform in 1956. I don't know what happened. I mean, well, the thing of race got into play, and then, you saw the Civil Rights Act pass, and Republicans decided to be vengeful ever since. All right. We have more cuts coming on March 14th. I forgot to mention that too. So let's see. Some more federal cuts that are coming because they're still gutting the government. President Donald Trump is making more federal cuts, this time targeting international media organization, public libraries, and homelessness reduction. An executive order signed by the president on Friday, March 14th, actually that was a few days ago, slashes funding to several federal agencies, the Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service, U.S. Agency for Global Media, Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars in the Smithsonian Institution, Institute of Museum and Library Services, U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness, Community Development Financial Institutions Fund, and Minority Business Development Agency. They said that one's got to go. Y'all Negroes are getting too much, right? And again, it's interesting. If you notice, all of those are agencies that center around education and keeping the people informed or ensuring that people are well off. And like I said, the idea is dumb everybody down, keep everybody dumb, change history. That's why all of a sudden it's illegal to talk about a whole bunch of certain things. They're doing everything under the sun because if they can just get a generation and a half to not really understand the conversation of cause and effect, to not really understand how history works, there's so much that they can get accomplished long term. And this is why I said this is not the time to jump into surface level politics. If you're going to get into politics, get all the way in it. You got to know everything. Okay, you just can't respond to something after 2022 and think you got the world figured out. No, we got to go to origins. This is why my videos be so long. People be annoyed, like, oh my God, sometimes your videos be like 2 or 3 hours. And even on your music related videos, those are 2 hours. Yeah, because if we're going to talk music or we're going to talk whatever artist, we need to provide the entire context, not just whatever album that came out and why it didn't do good, but can we talk about what other artists were out at the time, what labels were doing, what the budgets were looking like, what was happening in music, what was happening in the, like, you got to paint and put everything together so stuff makes sense. We're in this era of surface level, look at it at the surface and respond and go 10 toes down into some nonsense. That's what's got us into a lot of this nonsense, right? Even the whole thing with Habitat for Humanity. I just saw that too as well. These people are so stupid. Trump's FBI moves to criminally charge major climate groups. The Trump administration is targeting climate or climate organizations that received a Biden-era grant. The FBI is moving to criminalize groups like Habitat for Humanity for receiving grants for the Environmental Protection Agency under the Biden administration. Citibank revealed in a court filing Wednesday that it was told to freeze the group's bank accounts at the FBI's request. The reason? The FBI alleges that the groups are involved in possible criminal violations, including conspiracy to defraud the United States. The FBI has told Citibank that recipients of the EPA climate grants are being considered as potentially liable for fraud. They want to talk about fraud, but they just got rid of the CFPB. Make it make sense. That is, the Trump administration wants to criminalize work on climate science that impacts the Capitol Hunters account. Wrote Wednesday, an incoming administration not only cancels federal grants, but declares recipients as criminals. All these grantees applied under government calls for environmental work were reviewed and accepted. Trump wants to jail them. The Appalachian Community Capital Corporation, the Coalition for the Green Capital, and the DC Green Bank are just some of the nonprofits being targeted. This is not fraud. This is targeted harassment, Capitol Hunters continued. The idea of criminalizing community climate work wouldn't have originated at the FBI. It likely comes from the EPA Director Lee Zeldin, who today cut all EPA's environmental justice offices, which try to reduce pollution in poor and minority communities. Zeldin's order eliminates 10 EPA regional offices as well as the one in DC. Right? Habitat for Humanity, the people that build houses for the poor. They're going to jail. Crime, fraud, DEI. Where do I live? Okay. Speaking of, now, the other thing I will say, I do think that, God willing, this will be an era where a lot of our seasoned politicians get fleshed out, especially on that Democrat side, because they have gotten under my skin so much because they have caved so much. like I've said, now this does not to give a pass to Republicans for the nonsense. Like I've always said, don't let your smoke for Democrats give Republicans a pass to screw stuff up some more, because that's all they've been doing. Republicans will always, I'll always have my foot on their neck. I don't like that phrase anymore because George Floyd. But in this moment, Republicans will always get smoke from me. Point, period, blank. But Democrats, the challenge I've said they've always existed under is that their umbrella is so big. The problem is you have the GOP, which has now been 100% compromised. The fact that every Trump appointee was appointed, every last one of them, without any hesitation from the GOP, minus freaking Mitch McConnell of all people. And that might have just been because he fell and hit his head too hard and didn't realize what he was saying no to. They have signed on for this. They've signed on for watching all these veterans lose their jobs. They've signed on for the schools being defunded. They've signed on for healthcare being gutted. They signed on for all this, all in the name of profits, but passing it off as cutting fraud and bringing America back. Bullshit, right? Democrats, they have this big umbrella with everybody under it that's not a white male that's straight. That's pretty much the Democratic Party. They've taken under everybody. And the problem is, there is no centralized vision of what it is they actually want to fight for, because when you have such a large umbrella that includes a huge collection or collective of Black people, that has a decent segment of the Latino community, that has an overrepresentation of the LGBTQ plus community, because they're not fool enough to run with Republicans who are also, again, same-sex marriage is also on the docket for the Supreme Court. Good luck with that. Like it's a mess out here, right? Disabled a lot of times tend to fall under the protections of what Democrats tend to push for. When you're talking about the working poor, the working class, like they have so many groups represented under them. And so because of that, there's not a centralized fight for what it is that they want. And a lot of times they often cave. And I think their biggest mistake in the last few years is they continue to still play nice. They still continue to want to look like the good guy. Where they messed up is they continue to market themselves as the party of the good people. No, none of y'all are that. You guys are all politicians. You all get paid. You screw everybody over. And so it's to the point where, again, I still personally believe that we will always have a whole lot more leverage with Democrats than we ever will with Republicans. It's not even close. However, Democrats have no fight in them right now, right? Even with the censure, when they censured Al Green and the 10 that were like, oh, that was out of pocket. We can't condone that. I'm like, who are you performing for? Because if you're thinking you're going to win over any Republican voters by showing that you can be well-behaved boys and girls, it's not going to work. Because do you see what it is that Republicans are rallying behind at the moment? And then when they go and they do the censure, then the other Democrats that did not stand behind it, what do? They start singing "We Shall Overcome." I was watching that like, I know I said I would never get into politics, but you know what? Every now and then, I'm like, maybe I should just run. I don't even want to win. I just want to cuss everybody out at the debate. Like, I just want to chew everybody out. Like, what the is wrong with y'all? Why are y'all out here singing? Right? It's like oh my God. And then even with this whole, we know that there was the possibility of a shutdown. Now, this was kind of like a double-edged sword because, again, with this temporary budget that has now been passed, it grants Elon and Doge another 6 months to continue getting rid of all the programs that we've all lived and benefited from, including white folks who think that all these programs only benefited Black folks. No, it benefited y'all, which is why y'all at these town halls losing y'all ish, right? The option was go into a shutdown, force the Republicans to go back to the negotiating table. And as far as the shutdown, at this point, all the government employees are already on a chopping block anyway, not to sound selfish or anything, but I think because we've been through a few shutdowns before, in the long run, people will be more hurt by what's going to happen in the next 6 months than a shutdown that may have lasted for a week or two or maybe 3. And so to see Schumer, who caved, and Gillibrand, and Fetterman, who I think is eventually going to become a Republican. Fetterman is about to be our next cinema in Manchin, just so y'all know. To see them all jump ship, I was like, that was the last piece of leverage y'all had to kind of slow down this train of the Trump-Elon wagon. Because again, Trump is not even running anything. This is the Elon show. Elon is your president at the moment. Elon has his vision of what he wants the world to be like. That's why he spends all this time with the brain chips that they've been testing in the monkeys. Now, mind you, they keep putting these little chips in the monkeys' brains. All the monkeys keep dying because the trials ain't going too well. You got SpaceX because he wants to go to Mars, and SpaceX ships just keep crashing. Since we did the last live, we just saw the other SpaceX crash in the Bahamas again, right? He wants to do the SpaceX thing. He wants to take over the internet. He wants to do all these different things. And he's gotten in there by claiming he's going to run a more efficient government. And I'm like, but you don't even run your companies efficiently. Look at how terrible Twitter is. Tesla was a shit show before you took over this country. But man, so you have all that happening. And it's like, y'all had an opportunity to finally slow some of this down. But y'all were afraid of how you were going to look. You didn't want to look like the bad guy temporarily, so you all caved. So now you have no leverage. The only leverage that's possibly there is, like we know, April 1st, there is a special election in Florida. So if you're in that district, that can kind of help get one House seat. And there's also a special election in New York. There's going to be 2 coming in June, where we may possibly be able to flip the House. Right now, the House is operating at a 215, 216, right? In the event that you're able to get this Florida seat, which I don't know, to be honest, that would be 216, 216. Unfortunately, if at a tie, J.D. Vance is still president, so he just make the tie-breaking vote, which is why you need those other 2 districts in New York in order to have enough of a pool. But then Democrats in the House would all have to be 100% on the same page as well. And seeing that we just had 10 who were so offended by Al Green telling Elon and Trump that they're lying and they're full of it, I don't know what we get here. But I say all that to say, I'm hoping that we get a flush out of a lot of what I say are old guard politicians that need to leave. Their time has been up. Schumer's time has been up. It's time for him to go. Nancy, all y'all got to go. I'm sorry. Y'all been there forever and a day. We need some new blood. We need some people who are going to be here for the next 30 years, who will be on the receiving end of the policy that they sign off or don't sign off on. And I think what's happening, especially with a lot of these older Republicans and even Democrats that are allowing some of these things to happen, they know that they're going to be dead in 10 years. They've gotten everything they wanted out of life. They're just making sure that their last 10 years is an icing on the cake for them. It's so bad that some of these people don't even care about their grandkids. You literally watch politicians vote to take away the rights of the generations that come after them, and they don't care because they won't be here to see it. It is what it is, right? And they figure, I live my life, good luck, tough luck. That's wild to me. But yeah, it's just like too much. And I think the problem right now, especially with Democrats, it's not all of them, but it's some of them, they're still trying to run with the old guard. At this point, anything after January or anything before January 20th, 2025, it's not flying no more. We're at a space now where Trump doesn't even really have to listen to the law. Supreme Court just told him, okay, those people that you had on those planes that you were taking out El Salvador, turn them planes around. You can't do it. Or not the Supreme Court. A federal judge said, you got to turn those planes around. You can't take those people over there. These people aren't even from El Salvador, and you flying them over there. What did Trump do? Trump said, take them planes to El Salvador and land them. I don't care. Right? The White House has said a few times, every time there's an order that comes out that's like, you can't do this, they said, okay, who's going to stop us? And now that the FBI and the Department of Justice is compromised, who's actually enforcing any of this? Trump can do whatever he wants. Like, I don't think people realize. We're going to really see the tests and limitations of how checks and balances really work. Because Trump is going to keep just doing whatever he wants, just so y'all know, right? So we'll see how that goes. And that's why I said, again, this era of cementing, privatizing, and deregulating. That's where we're living. And now they're even going after NPR and PBS. NPR is too radical. PBS, too radical. Right? God dang. Well, Sesame Street ain't even on PBS anymore, I think. And you know what's weird? Because I always saw all these people just commentary talking about how, Joe Biden, it was tyranny under Joe. And I'm like, y'all are real quiet now. I don't be hearing nothing about Trump. Everybody be giving him a pass for this nonsense. I'm going to pause for a second. And that's why I said it again, too, we have to center the things that actually matter. Because I also saw that messy pool with Arlington Cemetery with the black veterans. I'm like, y'all just, white folks aren't even hiding no more. They just said that now that we have permission to just be terrible out in the open, we're going to do it. And they are all getting in line, right? Every company pulling and rolling back all these programs, pulling back scholarships. Everybody's out just living their best life in the world of whiteness. So I'm like, okay. And I want everybody to remember these days. Because for some reason, everybody got collective amnesia coming to this election. And I was like, did y'all forget how bad it was during the first Trump term? And I said, at least during the first Trump term, there was some element of checks and balances because he wasn't surrounded by all yes men, right? All the people who were checking him, like, no, you can't do this, you can't do that, they're all out of the picture. And 40 plus of them told us exactly why. You probably shouldn't go back in there. And everybody said, nope, give us more. Give us more. Put him right back in there. Now he's surrounded by yes men who are all lining their pockets, enjoying this. And we just got to ride this out. God willing, we get to have some midterms. But again, when people keep saying, we'll just wait till midterms. I don't think you want to ride this out another 18 months for fun. Ain't no telling what else is next. All right. Let me take a break, read some comments, and then we're gonna get to the rest of these topics. This is a mess, y'all. A mess, a mess, a mess. Mm-mm. Yeah, I don't know what the Democrats. Y'all need to get some backbones. Y'all are being real soft, and I don't like it. It's pissing me off. Like I'm not seeing enough bricks being thrown in general. If I was in the House in the Senate, the way I would snatch somebody up in the hallway real quick. All right. Oh, Baltimore, I would move to. I love Baltimore. It's one of my favorite cities. Somebody said, and people thought that Project 2025 or Project 25 was a fallacy. Yeah, okay, and I even in my chat, people used to be like, you fear mongering. This goes back to what I said about that individualism stuff. Oh, I don't live in fear. I need to see the pop ain't about. Okay, all right. And then some folks were so far in the trenches with their nonsense, now they don't want to admit that they sounded like idiots, so they're gonna still ride it out. Well, what are the Democrats doing to change it? That's not where we at now. Nope. Where's Kamala now? Being a private citizen because she don't know it's nothing anymore. Like y'all told her to get the hell on, so she went and got the hell on. So we'll see what we get in 2028. All right. Man. Calvin, how do we combat misinformation online within the community? I'm seeing way too many black influencers brainwashing their audiences. It's so freaking hard because the challenge has been my word all day. The challenge, I love saying the challenge of the space that we're in. And if I'm talking about music, that there was a shift in the trends with the music. The challenge is one, I think collectively society has a much shorter attention span. So people don't have the patience to want to really deep dive on a lot of things. Because I'm even seeing it with just, even when I do the deep dives, like I said, some of the commentary is like, oh, this video could have been 15 minutes. It could have been 15 minutes, but if I'm telling you the story of like Mariah, so what happened with glitter through emancipation, I could have told you in 15 minutes, but if I did it in 15 minutes, did you actually leave with something that you didn't know before, or did you just get the basic facts? So spending 3 hours on this stock, we were able to somehow correlate the story of how hip hop and pop were able to, become the collaborations become a normalized thing, and not just through a surface level conversation, but going all the way back to 1979 with the sequence and working our way up and highlighting how it initially started with hip hop music and rhythm and blues and eventually shifted into pop years down the line. Like we could get to that. We could talk about all these different things that took place in the music industry and what happened with the adult contemporary market and blah, 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 and so on and so forth. And so by the time you leave that 3-hour episode, there's no questions to be asked. I think with TikTok, which is a cool app sometimes, but we're approaching deeper conversations from a surface level and then letting that be the end all be all. And so when there's not enough context, not enough origin, not enough conversation on cause and effect, it's so easy for information to be thrown out there and be wrong. And there are some people who mean well, but they still put out misinformation. And then we have the others who put disinformation out. They know they're on some bullshit, but they get a check, right? Check is nice, right? The grift is great. And so you have that challenge. And then we also have the people who live in the space of everything's not that bad. And it goes back to just keep giving an inch to nonsense. Just give an inch. It's not that bad. I remember when the Proud Boys went and vandalized the church on 18th, and I did a live on it. Somebody said, Michael or Calvin, that wasn't really that big of a deal. Well, you see, they just got the trademark for the Proud Boys, right? You see, they got $2 million. It was a big deal. Because why are you vandalizing a church that's minding their business? And so we've gotten to this era where everybody wants like quick gratification. Nobody wants to do the research or put in the work, but everybody also wants to be the face of a movement with no work, with no grassroots, no organization, no collaboration, no anything, not even a history or understanding of everything. And this is why people are running around. Now you got folks talking about the transatlantic slave movement. It never happened. There were no ships, and the justification is because they can't find any ships. I said, you also can't find the Mayflower either. Like, make it make sense. There's so much going on. And then even with the conversations of indigenous and this, that, and the third, now we're all Native Americans, and all of us have been in the United States the entire time. Now, I don't disagree that there have been people coming across back and forth from the continent of Africa for years and years and years. But to all of a sudden start trying to rewrite history, because I don't know what it is y'all are looking at and where y'all are getting some of this information from, because most of the time when I ask people to give me a source and more than one, they either use the one book with that statue on it. I forgot what it's called. It's always that one book, which half the stuff in that book has been debunked, or it's somebody on YouTube who I'm not going to name, but they get on my nerves because they also said Harriet Tubman was a real person. And then when I read the comment section, folks are like, because I've been trying to tell everybody. When were you trying to tell me? Because I've been here we've been on YouTube talking trash since like 2011. I don't remember none of y'all saying none of this, right? There's just so much that's out there, right? I just saw the clip with the guy that was trying to say that the Gullah Geechee have no ties to Africa. And I'm like, as somebody whose family lineage kind of ties to the Geechee, I ain't really done all the research on everything yet, so I can't fully claim it. But it's like you're literally erasing other people's experience because you want to have a narrative. And not only that, but kind of gatekeep and be the face of something. A lot of people are moving in this arena where it's not even about making the collective better or educating. They just want to have a following, or they just want to have some clout. I told this story before one time where there was always like this like local radio show out here I used to always go to. They would do like a live taping and the people could like talk, with the mic and stuff. And so I remember asking, this is 2014 or something, right? I was asking, because this is when we were still in the era of, boycott all the businesses on Black Friday, only shop at the black businesses, and we're going to teach you lessons because it's $2 trillion in black buying power, all that stuff, right? And I remember saying like, how come there's not like an app that is as common as Google for us to know like how to find all these things, right? And before I could finish the question, the host got mad, like, that's already there. I was like, okay, well, I don't know what it is, right? And so this other lady that was there was like, I know what it is. I'm like, well, what's the app? You got to do your research. I said, we're losing the plot here. Do you want to just be right, or do you want to make sure everybody's good? And the point that I made was there were tons of apps, but there wasn't one universal. Like, here's the point. Y'all know on Instagram, if you want to go and find some celebrity gossip really quick, you can go to the Shade Room, you can go to Baller Alert, you can go to Hollywood Unlocked, you can go to Neighborhood Talk. It comes just like that. If we're talking about an app that highlights where black businesses are, nobody can just name something off it doesn't come. There's nothing there. There's going to be some who are exceptions that have done the work. But in general, to the collective, there's no common knowledge of an app that highlights every black-owned anything. It's just not there. That was the argument that I was making. Now, mind you, this was back in like 2014. So there really wasn't anything out there. But they all wanted to be the gatekeepers of information. You got to do your research. So you're going to hold on to that. Because I'm scrolling and I'm looking and there's like 20 apps. But what's the big one? But you want to hold on to it because you want to act like you're the most enlightened in the room. That's why we in here now on this radio show talking about the problems, because ain't nothing got fixed. Because everybody wants to be the face of something without the work, without collaboration. Or, again, they want to gatekeep. They got all the tools, all the knowledge. If somebody is telling you to only listen to them, they're on some bull. Like, I encourage all y'all to go and listen to everybody who is putting in the work and doing the research. That's why I be shouting out the channels I shout out, right? This is not the Me, Myself, and I show. I'm on here just saying how I feel about stuff. I don't see myself as any kind of political activist leader or anything. I'm just some guy from some small town called Spanish, Washington that has an opinion on a bunch of stuff and decided to start sharing it. That's it, right? Anyway, so as far as combating misinformation, people really have to start actually going back and looking at books, right? And I always say get more than one source or whatever it is that you're looking at. You always at least get 3 and 3 verified sources, because you also have to be careful, even when it comes to like statistics and numbers and information. It's so easy to utilize numbers to manipulate and paint a narrative. This is why sometimes racist people love to use the argument, black people only make up 13% of the population, but more than 60% of the crimes. And I'm like, whoa. Let's not get excited, because then when we start doing the stats, I'm like, okay, and who is the majority of the demographic that ends up becoming exonerated from these very same crimes? And which demographic of people is over-policed and over-prosecuted and underrepresented in the courts and often doesn't have the resources? And when we're talking about the conversation of intra-community crime, again, we already know, like, if we're talking murder, it's usually going to be a proximity killing. And I don't think people realize just how segregated the United States is. I think when you live in a metropolitan city or a metropolitan area, you see a little bit more diversity, so you think everybody's intertwined together. Y'all don't realize how white this country is. There are whole segments of this country where you won't see us for 50 miles. Okay, and so when we're even talking like, they bring the conversation of black on black crime, right? So white on white crime, as far as white people killing each other, is at a rate of about 86-87%. In the black community, it's 92-93. Now, again, this goes back to the conversation of people being prosecuted at higher rates, also in the same extent where a lot of times when you talk about resources within police departments, sometimes investigations don't run all the way in the same way that they do for other communities, so on and so forth. You're more likely to be killed by somebody you know or somebody you have some kind of relationship with. And because of segregation, because of redlining, all these different communities live amongst each other, which is why most of the time you're most likely to be killed by somebody who looks like you based on who it is that you know. But I will also say that when we're talking race, it is more likely for a black person to be friends and know somebody white than a white person to know somebody black and have a black friend, right? So there's so many different things that you can do with numbers. So even with numbers and stats, you have to really be careful. Please revisit my Breonna Taylor video because I think I did one where I really went down just everything with numbers. So visit my Breonna Taylor video. I hope the rest of the world watching realizes that we're not endorsing half this nonsense that's happening. We're collateral to this. There's one collective that signed us up for this, and they know who they are. Calvin, we got to say the quiet part out loud. The Democrats are now looked at as liars. They had the House and Senate, and we got no George Floyd bill, and we got no vote bill. They didn't do any of these things. They, again, like I said, they don't have a centralized vision of what they actually want. Their biggest platform and what they run on is just, we're not them. And I've been saying that's not enough. Even with Trump, yeah, we know he's terrible, but people want to know what else is it that they can also get. So I'm being told that the signal's going in and out. It's storming out here, so if I'm coming in and out, sorry, y'all. It's the weather. Yeah, they ran on we're not him, and everybody's the bad guy, and so on and so forth. And so it's kind of like. They have to have a real platform. They have to give actual tangible things. And there's too many who are too in good with other folks on the other side. Like, it's a mess. Too many are bought out. So they got to flush some people out of here. Okay. We got to keep going, y'all. I haven't even got to have my topics. You said he's going to get kicked out of office soon by Trump. Oh, you talking about Elon? Yeah, they're going to fall out at some point. And at some point, I don't know if it's going to be somebody getting kicked out right away. But yeah, they're not going to make it 4 years. Too much ego, too much of a power grab between the two. That's going to be one of the issues they run into. All right, we got to keep going, y'all. I'm going to skip one of these topics just for the sake of time. But I will jump to this. Slim Thug, white people don't need our help being terrible people, so I need you to just kind of shut up on reparations. Long story short, I saw the article with Brim Babin. He's another Republican congressman. He pushed out the No Bailouts for Reparations Act because, again, one of the things I've always said with history, they always want to take away and strip history because when you get to the conversation of history, especially Black history, it opens the conversation of what has happened, the conversation of cause and effect, and the conversation of why. Once you get to the why of what has happened, it gives you the origin and the answer, which is normally centered in anti-Blackness and white supremacy. And then when it gets to the question of, well, how do you fix it? It's all about a conversation of making people whole. When we talk cause and effect and the policies and the ordinances that have been put out that have affected Black people negatively, all of that is there. Boom, here comes the conversation of reparations, right? That's one of the reasons why they have been fighting to kind of gut things out of history and, CRT this and DEI this and woke that. And they don't want us knowing anything. Because if you know too much, you start asking why. And you want to remedy the things that are done wrong. And when you see how other groups have been given reparations, then you're like, why we didn't get ours, right? This group only had to deal with this for 10 years. We'd have dealt with it for 400 plus. So you have all those different things take place. And so that's the conversation of reparations. Anyway, Slim Thug went on some podcast because, of course, it's always a podcast. And he was saying, the reparations, we don't need to just be sitting there waiting for help, and we need to change our mindset, and we don't need handouts. And I need people to understand, feelings do not outweigh policy, wealth, and commerce. And every time there's a conversation of reparations, people love to paint it as Black people just waiting for a handout. No, Black people are fighting for what is owed. Half of the nonsense, look at what they are stripping away right now. We don't even have anything, and they still gutting stuff. Anything with our name on it is being gutted. You literally had, what's the thing I saw? This was so stupid. Where's that at? I had to laugh. Where is that thing at? This is how stupid Doge is, right? Doge, in an effort to sell off federal properties, they inadvertently exposed a CIA Black site in Northern Virginia, right? This was a CIA site that was like top secret. They saw the word Black and thought it was about us, and then decided to defund the property and sell it off. You just exposed a top secret location because you saw the word black. You just swore we was getting something. So fucking stupid. Like, what? Oh my God. So anyway, back to you, Slim Thug. So again, the people who've been advocating for reparations have been doing the research for years. Just because you heard of the conversation, you don't get to show up and speak on our behalf, right? Because he was saying, well, I've been good. I'm like, here we go again, a conversation of individualism. You're good because you had a music career on the backs of black people. We made you rich, right? So you get the luxury of being in a space where you probably won't ever have to want for a whole lot. But there's a lot of people who are living at the end result of punitive policy. We're not about to go down a list of all the things because we've done it on almost every live. But there's no way, if you are well researched and you know history and you've looked at the numbers, you've looked at cause and effect, you've looked at the origins, you've looked at everything starting from the moment we got dropped off the boats to the present. Even if you took slavery out of the conversation and just focused on what happened during sharecropping, or just focused on what happened during Reconstruction, or only focused on what happened with all of the laws that were put into place. Like, there's no way you can sit there and open your mouth to say that, right? And then he had the nerve to bring up the conversation about, like, yeah, because I mean, look at you got the nail lady and the corner store. They doing just fine in our neighborhood. And I'm like, again, you don't research anything, because had you done the research, you also understand that even when it came to redlining, Asian business owners were not allowed to open businesses in those white districts. Even though they had a little bit more proximity to whiteness, they still weren't white. They were not allowed to operate their businesses in those blue and green zones. The only zones where they could open a business were the red zones, where the black folks lived. And so, yes, when we want to talk about the emergence of all of these Asian-owned businesses in our neighborhoods, that started as a result of redlining, in addition to the fact that when you talk about the programs and the grants that were given to immigrant families that came here, they often got a lot of programs that we often were left out of. And even going back to, again, the banks providing loans in these red zone areas or redlined areas for Asian-owned businesses, these businesses would get the A-OK in the same way that black business owners in their own red districts were told no by the banks. If you haven't done that research, you don't get to bring up these conversations. Like, y'all MF is just dumb as I don't know what, and be loud, strong, and wrong, and want to lead all the conversations. That's what you keep ignoring cause and effect, but you ignore cause and effect, but then you want to have a statement based on a surface level opinion. And it goes back to what I was saying earlier, where people are like, oh, we need to build our institutions. We need to stop depending on that. What do you think we've been doing? Have we not sat here for 2 years and argued about everything that Edward Bloom has done in regard to undoing the progress that we were making, or even what we just saw with Fearless Fund, a joint venture capitalist program specifically aimed at providing grants for black women business owners, $20,000 or $25,000. Again, pocket change. That's just enough money for the company Christmas party. What did Edward Bloom say? Oh no, that's reverse discrimination. That is reverse discrimination against the Asian community and the Latino community. What about everybody else? And the Supreme Court, they literally shut down, closed up shop, right? Literally almost ran out of money with litigation and just said, forget it, we quit. We're never gonna win this. They got so triggered by a handful of black business owners getting $20,000 from their own community, in their own community. And so that's why when people are like, oh, we need to build our own institutions. Where were y'all at during the Tulsa conversation? Where were you at during the Colby, Florida conversation, or Rosewood, or Lafayette, Louisiana, or what happened in St. Louis, or literally what has happened in almost every metropolitan city where black people live? Where were you at in those conversations? Where were you at in the conversation when we talked about the black women in Greenville being ordered to work for white women? Because black women had went and got their own jobs and didn't want to babysit white kids anymore. And white women got mad because they didn't want to take care of their own kids, and then complained at the town halls and the town city councils, and then the mayor's like, oh, black women, y'all can go back to work. Like, where have y'all been for these conversations? But y'all show up and get these podcasts and get the loudest microphone and got the most to say, and don't be knowing shit. Sorry for cussing, but like, I'm just like, man. And so like, I am over it. Like, I keep seeing all these people regurgitate talking points that are dated, or they really don't have any idea of just like, what are you talking about? And again, reparations is not just about this current era. It's about ensuring that the next generation will be okay. I don't think people realize there is $84 trillion in wealth that is about to be transferred from the baby boomers down to Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z, right? And I think you guys, please go and look at the report from urban.org, right? Did I have a piece of that? Because understand, that $84 trillion in wealth, the majority of it will not be going to black folks because black folks don't have any wealth, right? Well, there's going to be some that's there, but I'm not going to read the whole report because there's so much on here. Let me see if I can find one of these numbers on here. Data. I'll put the link in the description as well. Even right now, when we're talking senior home ownership rate by race, at the current moment, and this is, again, senior citizens, 82.6% of white Americans own their home. Only 58% of black Americans do at the moment. When we're talking assets, right? White Americans have $87.9 trillion in assets, right? And then if we're talking total assets excluding the value of their primary residence, meaning we're not including their home, they still have $70.4 trillion. Let me say that again. White Americans, as far as senior citizens, have $87.9 trillion in assets. That's including their home that they own. When you take away the home that they own, they still own $70.4 trillion. Now let's get to black folks. Black folks, $1.9 trillion. This is that $2 trillion everybody keeps talking about. Oh yeah, we got $2 trillion in buying power. We gonna send a message. You $2 trillion. We're gonna hold our money. No, that's $1.9 trillion. That's what's there. That includes the house. When you get rid of the house, when Big Mama's house is taken out of the conversation, 0.9% of a trillion, right? So $900 billion. That's all we own. That is it. So when we're talking that wealth transfer from baby boomers to Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z, and anybody from Gen Alpha, if they're old enough to get anything, which no, they're still kids right now. That's $1.9 trillion that we got to split versus white folks who are going to be getting $87.9 trillion. So when we're talking cause and effect, this is how do you think they were able to get 89 point anything? This is where reparations comes into the conversation. This is what people have been talking about and preaching about for years and years and years. And this is why I kept saying, especially in politics, we can never have a surface level approach to politics because you have to think the long term, right? Whiteness is never going anywhere. White people collectively are never going to stop being terrible people as a unit. They're going to always be in the way. Even when we don't have anything, they want to take our nothing. They want to take our nothing and make it an They don't want the nuff. Y'all got enough. Get rid of that nuff. Y'all getting too much of the nuff. Enough got to go. You just get the and we're gonna take that too, right? And so when you look at all of the wealth that has been able to be accumulated by white folks, the majority of it comes from oppressing black folks. The majority of it comes from punitive policy. It came from redlining. It came from not being a part of the New Deal as far as black folks. It came from being left out of the GI Bill. It came from being left out of the FHA program. It came out of job discrimination. Everything that you can think of under the sun. That's how white people got wealthy. And what's so funny is there's still so many white people that are poor. Even after doing all that BS to us and bringing in $89 trillion, them as a collective are still struggling. There's still more white people in this country that are poor than wealthy. And so that demographic still has vengeance. They are mad because they didn't get a piece of the pie. And they think we got it. And we're like, we don't got a piece of the pie. All they did was make us clean the pan. Right? We don't got it. And they're pissed at us. So they done took our dish detergent because they're like, well, you won't be washing the pan. You're going to get more trouble. Like, that's what we're living under. And so that's why I'm just like, I need all these people to just stop talking. If you don't know what you're talking about, shut up, right? God. And that's why I said, be careful and do not fall under the nonsense that's happening. I saw Ben Shapiro talking about, oh, let's pardon Derek Chauvin. That's the guy that killed George Floyd. I'm like, I'm not even giving that any energy. You want to know why? Because Derek Chauvin was still charged at a state level. And so even if they were to pardon him on a federal level, he's still going to serve his time at the state level. He's not getting the pardon from the president. The president doesn't have that power. So I'm not about to waste time arguing with a Ben Shapiro. Because, of course, Elon Musk was like, yeah, we should look into that, too. I can't wait for somebody to let me shut up. All right. Anyway, you got to just dismiss the foolery, right? And mind you, again, because it's now a free-for-all in what I call the whiteness renaissance, they're going to do whatever they want. We just saw, even with the Breonna Taylor case, the 2 DAs that initially were charged with the cover-up, those charges have been dropped, of course, right? And so this is not the era to be an individual just thinking about yourself and your ego because you want to be right or you want to look like you're the most smartest one in the room. For some reason, I always said there's a large, not maybe large, but there's a good segment of our community or our collective who looks down on the collective. They think the rest of our collective are a bunch of dumb, ignorant niggas. That's really what they think of us. And so anytime we fight for anything, it's seen as us whining or asking for a handout or getting something we don't deserve. And they will talk down to us and tell us that we all just need to work harder and pull yourself up by the bootstrap. And you need to just invest in crypto. You need to just give your money to the Tulsa Fund. You saw where that went. Y'all need to just trust what I'm saying. I got a special program. You need to just buy my book. I got a book I made, and I'm the only one who knows how to fix this, right? And then people run behind all that and get scammed. Anyway, that's all I'm going to pause on that because I have a few other topics that I have not gotten into, and we're already at 2 hours and 20 minutes. But when I tell you, I'm tired, y'all. Sometimes I just want to make my little music and do my music documentaries and do happy stuff. I don't feel like cussing people out every day. Like, damn. Okay. I apologize for the sound issues. Like I said, the weather is crazy out here. So yeah. Calvin, I know you know that the Pentagon was built on a black town. Yes, the space where they built it in Virginia, yep, right over what used to be an area where we're at. Yep, there's so many. Yeah. All right, let me bring my energy back down. Y'all about to get me all hyped up, and I still got to get to the other stuff. Okay. This Quaadir and Nazir Lewis story, which is very disturbing to me. We're going to read it really quick. This is the two guys that missed the flight. Now somehow they're dead and they try to claim it's a suicide. Let me read this really quick. Twin brothers missed their flights to Boston, found dead 24 hours later in the Georgia mountains. Quaadir and Nazir Lewis bodies were found on Bell Mountain. Their family disputes the GBI's initial murder-suicide ruling, insisting the twins wouldn't hurt each other. A mystery is unfolding, and this is as of March 16th. A mystery is unfolding on Bell Mountain in Towns County after the bodies of twin brothers from Lawrenceville were discovered nearly 90 miles from home. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation is initially treating the case as a murder-suicide, but the victim's family is pushing back, saying that explanation doesn't add up. Quaadir and Nazir Lewis, both 19, were found shot to death Saturday morning by a hiker at the Summit Bell Mountain near the North Carolina border. The discovery came as a shock to their family, who had believed the twins were in Boston visiting friends at the time. We want answers. We want to know what happened to the twins, their aunt said. The twins were inseparable. According to family members, had no known history of conflict. They were very protective of each other. They love each other. Their uncle Raheem Bronner said, they're like inseparable. I couldn't imagine them hurting each other because I've never seen them get into a fistfight before. The family said the brothers had booked the flight to Boston for 7 a.m. last Friday, but never made their flight. Just 24 hours later, they were found dead in an area the family said they'd never visited before. The family said the brothers' plane tickets were found in their wallets on the mountain. How did they end up on the mountain? They don't hike out there. They've never been out there, Bronner said. They don't know anything about Hawaii, Georgia. I think that's what it's called. They never heard Bell Mountain, so how did they end up right there? The GBI stated their preliminary findings suggest a murder-suicide, but the family strongly disputes that conclusion. We knew right away that wasn't true, Bronner said. Why would they put it add right while I'm reading the thing? Their aunt Yasmin Bronner added, they had a huge support system. We know them. They wouldn't do anything like this. They said this to each other. No, something happened in those mountains and we want answers. The GBI confirmed that autopsies have been completed, but the agency is still awaiting additional forensic test results along with additional investigative work before issuing a final ruling on the cause of death. That doesn't add up. And there's been a history where we see people from the collective end up dead, and it's always said, oh, they killed themselves. It makes me think of, we've seen a few cases where even, I think the guy we talked about a few times, I forgot his name because there's just been so many, but the guy who was arrested on the marijuana charge, and then somehow the police claim while he was cuffed in the back of the police cruiser, he was somehow, even though he was, I think, left-handed and shot himself with his right hand or the other way around, he shot himself in the head over a marijuana charge, which would have been a misdemeanor, right? They claimed he killed himself. Something doesn't add up with this. And I think especially now that, again, we said we're in the whiteness renaissance, white folks are feeling very empowered. We're watching lots of terrible people be pardoned and get off from doing any and everything. And this is the perfect time to be an openly racist person because you might be able to get away with some of the nonsense that they could get away with back in the 50s and the 60s and the 40s and the 30s. Collectively, this is the time we got to really start being vigilant and be careful amongst ourselves because, these kind of things are going to happen and they're going to be out here lying and playing in our face. There's no way these two twins went and killed themselves. There's no way these two twins decided, hey, let's go to wherever we went and, hey, are you tired of living? I'm tired of living too. Let's just shoot each other. Yeah, let's do 1, 2, 3, go. Don't play in our face. We're gonna see what happens with that. I'm gonna kind of follow that story. It's even with the story with the woman who had to sleep over that mysteriously died in Virginia, and even the boy in the wrestling mat. I don't like saying the boy that doesn't come out right. Is that not the is that not the Quan McDonald? Eric Kendrick Johnson. I was about to say Eddie Kendricks. Kendrick Johnson in the wrestling mat. That case is still real sketchy. Like, they will play in our faces so much. So this is the era to ask questions. That's why I keep saying this surface level approach to stuff. That's a surface level response to what we just witnessed, right? That makes no sense. Okay, Caleb Wilson. As you know, his funeral was yesterday. This was the student that was pledging and died, right? Apparently, he was punched in the chest and passed out. He was taken to the hospital later down the line, but I think he was already dead at that point. There's been 3 that have been arrested. I'll just say this. Now, listen, I wasn't interested in Greek life when I was in college, mainly because nobody in my family was Greek. I have one person or one family member, or maybe 2 that are Greek. But coming up, I knew nothing about Greek life. My introduction to Greek life was what I saw on the Parkers, and those weren't even real organizations, right? So I've never been one to really have a huge opinion on Greek life or the Divine Nine, or really wanted to be in it when I was at Howard, which is crazy because a lot of them started at Howard. That would have been a perfect place to pledge. I just was never into it, right? And again, to each his own. I think it works for some people. For me, I was good at that point, right? In this era, with everything that's happening, all I'm going to say is, for those that have killed this guy, y'all want to move like this right now? Like, this is the time frame that you really, in this current era, this is the way y'all want to move. Especially now that literally everything that's Black is literally under every element of attack. Like, I could see this being a thing where the Divine Nine start being a target for, like, campuses to start removing all. Like, we're already in a space where anything that's not white, straight male is under attack because it's DEI. This is not the time to want to start shaking the table for a bunch of nonsense. And I think, sadly, with this case, this, in my opinion, is a situation of individual ego versus organizational integrity. Because it's understood that collectively these organizations don't stand for this kind of nonsense. But I think when you have individuals who love that element of power, who love to put people through a process. That was one of the things that got on my nerves when I was at Howard. Everything was a freaking process. I mean, you wanted to start any kind of club, it was a process. I remember, okay, so my sophomore year, I stayed in this dorm called Meridian. Like, Meridian was where I stayed my sophomore, junior, and senior year. Meridian was technically, when I was there, it's not a dorm anymore. It was a sophomore freshman dorm. The freshman dorms all had these different organizations for the freshmen to kind of like build bonds. So, like, if you were in Drew Hall as a freshman male, they had like the Gentlemen of Drew. I forgot what Carver had, but Carver was the other male freshman dorm. They had something that they had. The Annex had something, and then the Annex and the Quad were the girl dorms, right? They had the Laser Quad, which was like a group. The Annex, they had something, I don't know what it was called. The Carver had something. Meridian, our dorm, because we did have freshmen on the second and third floor, I remember the freshman girls one year, because I was already there, like, we want to have like a group too, because we think our freshman girls should have like some kind of group that they can click with. And the guy in charge of the dorm was like, "Oh, hey, cool, boss man from the podcast." Or not the current podcast episodes with the kids, but when I was doing the Howard University episodes, right? So he's like, "Cool, you'll start your group." So this first year, they start the group, and then, the Misses of Meridian, and they hanging out and do their thing and got their group. Man, that next year came, and it was time for the old Misses to bring in the new ones. Of course, the first thing they started doing, they had them girls out there running laps and doing push-ups, and I'm like, what y'all doing? First of all, okay, everything does not have to be a haze, right? But no, I see this as, again, a conversation of like individual egos, people feeling themselves too much, getting that whiff of power. The dangerous thing about sometimes being given too much power is people turn into the worst of the worst. And I think in this case, situation with Caleb, the saddest thing is he just wanted to be a part of something, right? He wanted to belong to something. He wanted to be a part of a legacy that so many are a part of. Because again, I have nothing against Greek organizations. I've seen really, really great things with some of what they do. I've also seen some things I don't like, which is one of the reasons why I wasn't interested. But yeah, and it's like some people get elements of power and don't know what to do with themselves, and they just get terrible. And so to literally, who thought it was smart to punch somebody in the chest? Like, make it make sense. What did you think would happen? and they probably punched that kid so hard. And I get that people like the idea of saying, well, people have to struggle and go through things together in order to build a stronger bond. I guess, but people should not be dying, and it's not just limited to that organization, because we've seen it across the board with every, not even just Black Greek organizations, but the white ones. The white ones stay giving them white kids alcohol poisoning. Them white kids be dying all the time. But it's like, I don't understand, how is it that you move so far away from what it is your organization is trying to push or trying to, put out there, that it becomes all about you and your ego, and you just do whatever, to the point where now you have people like permanently out of here. That's wild to me. And especially in this era with everything happening, this is the last time you would want to draw, or the worst time that you would want to draw any kind of negative attention to yourself. Absolutely crazy. And then my friend just texted me. Speaking of, I'm not gonna tell that story. I'm not gonna tell it. Okay. Man. Okay, I'm not gonna tell it. Anyway, it was related to this, but we just knew somebody that wanted to pledge, and they did not want that person on the line at all. And they had that person doing everything under the sun. They were trying to get that person to quit so badly. Anyway, I think it's really sad. I think this is definitely going to have a negative effect on a lot of D9 organizations on a lot of campuses, right? I think Southern already canceled all of their lines for this year. And I think it sucks for people who are going about the process the right way, the proper way. And listen, I know they do whatever they do and whatever's it, but sometimes y'all gotta have to just change stuff. I'm not Greek, so I don't know what they be doing behind the scenes, right? So I'm not trying to talk to somebody who's Greek who can talk about it. This ain't really my bailiwick, but wild to me. Nobody should be dying. He literally wanted to be a part of something. He, like, the very people that you were going to entrust to be your lifelong brothers, and make it make sense, right? That's so wild to me. And I feel bad for the parents. And like, you send your child off to go and make a better life, and damn, they don't even make it back. Not because over some nonsense, right? It's wild to me. Like, absolutely not. Okay, let me read some comments on this. And again, I know some of you people that agree might not like what I've got to say, but at the end of the day, nobody should be dying going through a process. We got enough we got to deal with in this country. That's a great comment, KO. Somebody said, go on a road trip, you'll find out how segregated this country is. I'm telling you, once you get out of these metropolitan cities, especially on the coastlines, you start getting to that middle America, there's some places you don't want to stop. One of the cool things I saw when I was in Houston, my friend had took me to, it's the last place, and if you're in Houston, you should go to it if you haven't been there. It's the last like active El Dorado Ballroom. It was a stop in the Green Book, and it's still an active place. They had this really, really good oxtail sandwich. I thoroughly enjoyed it. The El Dorado Ballroom, Houston's finest dance palace. Yeah, used to be a venue way back in the day. You get in for 75 cents. Really, really cool place that I saw. Okay, let's see. So I said, what does Snoop got to say now? You see all these rappers are quiet. Remember Nelly was talking about, I want to see the proof of this racism. Well, it's out here, Nelly. You've been kind of quiet. And you heard a whole lot. Somebody said, you need to buy Trump coin. Trump coin already crashed. Right? Yeah, sorry guys about this sound. The weather's doing what it wants to do. Somebody said, were they hung as far as the two brothers? We don't know. But I know something ain't right in the water with that one. Y'all play in somebody else's face. Y'all gonna stop. And I feel like, too, once you have discernment, you can tell when stuff don't be adding up, right? Forsyth County, Georgia. Yeah, you still should be going over there, right? That used to be an all-white little town. Apparently, they got a few of us over there now, but I would not want to be one of the first ones to move over there, right? Also, let's talk about how some of these organizations have colorism, assault, toxic masculinity, and hazing happen. There's so much that happens. The reason I wasn't interested in Greek life, like I said, nobody in my family was Greek. So it wasn't like when I got to house, I was like, oh, I have to pledge. I didn't fully grasp what it was that they did, and I didn't have an interest. And then by the time I became an RA, because you know you had to work the night shift, you knew everybody's business in the building, right? You saw who was going out jogging at 3 a.m. or who had to abruptly leave the building. But I saw a lot of people that changed, and sometimes not for the better, right? Once they got their letters, and I was like, I'm good on this. Now, again, I know some really great people that are in all these different organizations, lovely people, but I've also seen some people that ain't shit. So there's that. I'm gonna stop cussing. Anyway, okay, we got through almost all the heavy stuff. Thank God. All right. Don Robinson from In Vogue. That one was very, I wouldn't say it's surprising. If you didn't know, Don is the fourth member, one of the originals from In Vogue. All right. And she recently revealed that she's been living in her car for the last 3 years. I'm going to say this, right? Don Robinson, to me, is somebody who means well, but the execution of how she does things don't quite align with the people that she often interacts with. And I think a lot of times it's gotten in the way of some progress. And that's just that piece. However, I would also like to highlight that it also highlights the ills within the industry with the fact that a lot of these artists have never been paid properly what they should have received. The issue that In Vogue had, and one of the reasons Don did leave In Vogue, was because with their initial contract, they only got 2 cents per album sale. Okay? Remember, TLC went bankrupt, and they were getting 56 cents for every album sold, and they had to split that 3 ways. TLC situation was they were under Arista, which then, well, it was Arista, that was Clive Davis and crew. Then there was LaFace, that's Babyface and L.A. Reid. Then there was Pebbletown, which they were signed under, that was Pebbles. And then they also had their management and everything else like that. And then the money went to them, right? And that was a 56 cent a piece split 3 ways. In Vogue had 4 members, and they're splitting 2 cents. And this is not to be shady, but In Vogue didn't sell the same amount of records as TLC. Like Funky Divas, I think, sold 3 or 4 million copies. Born to Sing, I think, might be certified double platinum now, versus the TLC tip, which at the time did about 4 million internationally. It might be up to 6 now. And Crazy Sexy Cool had done about 12 internationally, right? Not even the same numbers. So imagine how little the money is. And I remember they went and renegotiated the contract after Funky Divas. That's when they had the success. That's the album that had Never Gonna Get It and given him something he can feel and free your mind and give it up, turn it loose, right? Terry does a solo album. She releases is it Southern Gal? It's a really nice album. It has a song like It Ain't Over and Whatever Did I Do to You? And I forgot what else. I Don't Want to Wait Till Tomorrow. It's actually really nice. It's a nice album. It kind of reminds me of what Tweet ended up doing later down the line. Anyway, I saw that to say they get ready to go do EV3. The management wants a 2-year commitment, no competition, meaning nobody else can go solo. Everybody has to commit 2 years to the EV3 project. They just came off their big hit, Don't Let Go, from the Soul or Set It Off soundtrack. Don is like, you know, I was about to get ready to go solo. I was going to do some solo stuff, and I can't commit 2 years to this EV3 project. Plus, I don't like this contract because the money ain't looking right. Fast forward, Don leaves the group. She says, look, good luck to y'all. Have fun. They release EV3. It still goes platinum. They do a little something here and there. Don is doing a few gigs here and there. She eventually ends up in Lucy Pearl, right? Raphael Sadiq and Ali from Tribe Called Quest. And the money is funny even with Lucy Pearl. As far as the advance, they didn't get a super huge advance, and she was already broke at this point. She was about to lose her house then. Lucy Pearl, one of my favorite albums, by the way. I love the song Every Day. That is my song, man. And of course, again, Dance Tonight is one of my favorite songs as well. And Rifle Love and I Can't Stand You. I love that album. Anyway, something happens with the group. They don't all get along. Don is out of the group with Lucy Pearl. She then drops a solo album that doesn't really do very, very well. It's also interesting because the Lucy Pearl album dropped the same day as In Vogue's Masterpiece Theater, the album that came after EV3. Masterpiece Theater didn't do that well. Masterpiece Theater is the album that had the single Riddle on it, where it's the 3. I also thought that was the best they looked in their music videos because all of them was fine in that video. But yeah, and then In Vogue, you know, they do some more lineup changes and shifts around, and they come out with the Soulflower album. I think Rona's in the group by then. They had another girl named Amanda, where it was just Carrie and Cindy and Amanda, and they had like a Christmas album and a DVD. And then Amanda was only in for like 2 years. Rona was in there, I think, after Maxine left. Long story short, then they got back together, right? They got back together around 2005. I remember they did the VH1 honors with hip hop. They did a performance of Salt and Pepper of What a Man, which was really, really good. And then they started doing some spot dates here and there. Then we saw them at the BET Awards with Alicia Keys. And then that's when they officially were back together with the 4. They toured up until about 2010, 2011. They were supposed to go in the studio. Dawn didn't like the contract. She left again, and it was the three. And then Maxine left again, and then Rona came back, and then it was those three. We just saw the halftime show, and it was the original three with Maxine plus Rona. Dawn didn't join. There was a period in 2019 where all five were in act for a quick minute. But like I said, I think there are some people who just don't gel well together in certain situations. They can be as talented as they want to be, but there's just some things that don't add up. But I will say In Vogue, in my opinion, has never gotten what they should have gotten financially. I will also say that In Vogue's heyday, as far as when the money was really coming in, as far as that big money, stopped after 1997. And so that means for the last almost 30 years, they would have been moving off of what comes from touring. I think that's why In Vogue is on the road year round. Terry and Cindy and Rona be on the road all year. Dawn has not really been on the road. We haven't really seen Dawn. We've seen Dawn doing like interviews on YouTube and stuff in the last few years. And so clearly, I think there's not really any royalty checks coming. The other issue is In Vogue didn't write most of their songs in those early years, so there's no royalty checks coming. There's no big payouts from those early albums. I don't know what the situation is with the Lucy Pearl album, and I don't really know what happened with her solo project. I just remember the song Envious. So yeah, I think Dawn's situation is a reflection of what has happened to a lot of prominent Black entertainers in the industry, that their money wasn't right to begin with. But I do also think there have been some choices that Dawn has made that also did not work in her favor, that play a role. And it sounds like she is in her car by choice. She's just chosen her own peace and happiness. That's why I said Dawn is in her own world, and Dawn will be fine, right? I would love to see the original In Vogue get back together, plus Rona, because I don't like that y'all always be trying to kick Rona out the group. Rona at this point has been in the group. Let me do the numbers here, because I think I saw something that had the timing for who's been in for what. Do I still have that? Let me see, because they've all been in this group for a minute. Let's do the numbers. Where is that thing at? Because Mark Chappelle just sent it to me the other day. Where's it at? Okay, In Vogue, right? Terry Ellis has been in the group the longest, which is so funny because she wasn't supposed to be a member. It was supposed to only be 3 members, and then she got a last-minute audition and found her way in the group, right? So Terry has been in for 36 years. Cindy has been in for 35. Maxine has been in for 21, right? Rona Bennett, the one everybody keeps trying to kick out, and I'm like, y'all don't realize Rona is the reason In Vogue is even still touring. She's been able to help keep the legacy alive by serving as that third voice, because as much as I love Terry and Cindy, if it were just those two, people wouldn't buy tickets, right? People just need to see somewhat of a reflective number of the group represented, right? Don Robinson was in the group for 11 years. That includes the peak plus the reunion. And then Amanda Cole, who I said the girl that did the Christmas album, was in there for 2 years, from 01 to 03 after Maxine left, right? So it's kind of like, I don't know. I would love for all 5 of them to get together and do some things, because they would definitely, the money would be really good if you could get the original In Vogue on the ticket plus the 5, right? Just do, in the same way I say Destiny's Child should do a reunion, even if it's just a one night only at Essence Festival. It don't got to be a whole tour. Get the original 4 plus Michelle. And they could rotate the show. You could have some segments of the show where it's the original 4. You could have some segments where it's the 3. You could have some where it's all 5. You could have them mix it up. You could do all kinds of things. In Vogue could do the same thing. They could have some moments where, maybe it's just Maxine, Terry, and Cindy for the stuff that they did off the Soulflower album, because I really did like their cover of Guy's Piece of My Love, right? And maybe you can have a segment where it's just Terry, Cindy, and Rona, where they might do Rocket, which is off their last album. And then you get the original 4 in the lineup. Maybe we get all 5. Mix it up. There's money to be made, right? I don't know what's going to happen there, but as a bigger part of the conversation, there's so many entertainers who are still touring, not because they want to, but because they have to. I don't know if that's really the case for Terry and Cindy. I think their money is fine. But just in general, a lot of R&B acts that came out of the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, a lot of them didn't get paid what they should have gotten paid back then. Left Eye talked about that with TLC, saying like their first contract wasn't a bad contract. It was just a contract new artists get, because the labels, especially back then with the old guard of how record labels work, you had to prove yourself. So you often got a crappy contract. And then once you sold some records, made some money, then you can go and renegotiate the contract. But there's that. Let me see what we're saying in the comments here. Now, I was going to be shady because I was like, since she was in the car, I wanted to be like, well, Don, you could have went ahead and drove to the rehearsals for the halftime show and did the show, but I'm going to be respectful and stay in my lane, right? Let's see. Oh, we still in the sundown towns. Somebody said Don was never paid correctly for Lucy Pearl neither. She was taking advantage of each group she was in. Yeah, something didn't sound, because I remember Lucy Pearl broke up really quick because I remember like I enjoyed that album. And then when they came out with the You song or All I Really Want Is You, I was like, that's not Dawn in the video. Who was that? And it had only been a year, right? I'm like, dang, right? Somebody said sad for Dawn, she's still beautiful. Yeah, En Vogue to me was such a beautiful group. You ever see the picture they took during the reunion where they hell, I pulled it up. I know I got it in here. It was like had recreated one of their original pictures. They have always been really beautiful to me. Actually, pretty much every black girl group in the 90s was always a special kind of find. And I love that all of them looked different. Like TLC looked nothing like En Vogue. En Vogue looked nothing like SWV. Every group just had their own look, right? 702, like they all, where's that thing at? En Vogue 2010. They all had their own look. But I really enjoyed the picture that I saw of En Vogue when they, here it goes. Let's see if I can make this big. This is I love this picture. I think they look so nice here. Like Cindy's gorgeous, Dawn is fine, Maxine's fine, Terry, who looks just like Holly Robinson Pete. These are some beautiful women. Love that. Black women look so good. We black folks just look good, right? We look good. We be 90 years old, still looking like we 62, right? But yeah, let's see. Yeah, En Vogue deserved a lot more. Somebody said Electric Cafe was a solid album too. Yeah, I like that album. I like the song I'm Good as well. Brandon Tillery. Let's see. JP Mackey. So I said plus Farrah. Now, when I brought up Farrah on the last one, y'all cussed me out. So I pulled her out of the group. Even though I think, look, Farrah's vocals are on Independent Women. That's the one song that she did actually record. Her backgrounds are on Independent Women, and her backgrounds are on the TV ad that Destiny's Child did for the WNBA. She's on those two. So maybe Farrah can come out for Independent Women, right? Let's see. Somebody said, I saw En Vogue a few years ago and the three sounded good. They were also beautiful. Yeah, they've always been really good. And my thing is, like, at this point, everybody's getting older too. There's only so many years left where you're going to be able to tour and still sell out venues. Like En Vogue has had a really good run because they've been able to join other tours. So they've been doing arena tours. Same with like a TLC, right? And SWV. Like all these groups, because they're doing these collaborative shows, are not only just doing theaters, they're doing arenas. So I'm like, go on and get your money, right? A lot of people have said, well, Dawn's a common denominator, and I don't want to whack her while she's down, but it does kind of come off that way. But which is why I said I think she means well, but I think how she operates and moves just does not align with how other people do things. Kind of like Lauryn Hill. Lauryn Hill is excellent talent, but as far as her touring record in the last, well, she's gotten better lately, but in those early years where she was always late and cussing out the crowd and stuff, and her time don't align with energy, all that kind of stuff. Some people kind of just live in their own space. You kind of have to meet them where you can. Now, the beautiful thing is, like, once people start actually performing and the music is there, everybody speaks the same language. People that love the arts are going to go all out. But the business side is crazy. It's one of the reasons why, thank God, I wasn't in a boy band. Because, man, Lord. All right. Oh, apparently, side note, different story. The astronauts are almost coming home. They're still up there, but they're going to be coming home soon. What else was I going to bring up? I think that was it. Somebody's asking about Southwest in the bags. Look, if Southwest Airlines wants to be one of the other terrible airlines, y'all be my guest, but it is what it is. I'm tired of flying anyway. All right, those are all, I believe, my main topics. Let me look at my thing, make sure I didn't skip anything. And so we'll just chop it up in chat. I apologize for the sound doing its thing, but it's storming outside. Mind you, it was a nice 70 degrees earlier today. So I don't know what's in the water. Okay, yeah, I covered everything. Perfect. Okay, so let me read some chats and then we'll go from there. All right. I'll give this about 10 minutes. I'm ready to go to sleep. let me get back to these cases here. Wendy Johnson, not handouts, it's what's owed. Again, that's going back to reparations. Yeah. Anytime people use the term handouts, I see it as a conversation of anti-blackness. It's again painting the narrative of black people being lazy. Even though we built this whole country for free, and then not after we built it, we had to sustain it for pennies as sharecroppers, or sustain it as convict leasing and getting arrested every 5 minutes because they had black codes and every reason under the sun to arrest us. We've always maintained this country. And so when people try to use the term lazy to associate with us, I'm like, nope, you're not doing that. Nope. So I never like the term handouts because it's not a handout, right? People are living off the wealth that our ancestors created, right? And that's why when we did those numbers, we're looking at $89 trillion versus 1.9 trillion. And you want to talk about handouts. You 89 trillion has got a whole lot of handouts. I'll tell you that. Somebody said, can we cut the mics for these podcasts? Some of these are just trash. And this is not even a dig at the people, because I got a podcast, but I mean, mine is storytelling. By the way, there's another comedically hard-headed episode that drops in 2 weeks. I'm just getting the New Jack Swing deep dive out first, which is, by the way, I had to download 612 music videos to finish my video. That took forever in a day. Plus, all the software I normally use to get all my videos is being yanked off the internet. So if y'all knew how much goes into making these deep dives and so what happens, you have no idea. That's why when I publish them and I'm riding the high, yay, it's finally out. And the video hasn't even been out for 10 minutes and somebody's like, when are you going to do this? I'm like, what? What are you doing, Michael Jackson? But the Mariah one has only been live for 20 minutes. There's still 2 hours and 40 minutes to go. Don't you want to watch that one? I just worked on that one forever. But anyway, comedically hard-headed is we're getting to the next episode. But yeah, some of these podcasts, people don't even have anything to talk about. It be the same topics. It's relationships and what men are doing wrong, what women are doing wrong, and whatever else, and what you eat on the first date, and is Red Lobster too. By the way, just dumb stuff. Black boy, me and my bestie just went to Red Lobster, Friday? Yeah, because I had a taste for the biscuits. And I was like, let's do Red Lobster. We always enjoy all of the chain restaurants. Because I remember when we came from the beach, at first we were going to go and get one of the nice restaurants on the water, and they dropped the seafood on the table. And then we were like, you know what? You got a taste for Outback Steakhouse? Let's do Outback. I got a taste for that onion bloom ring thing, right? I'm not too good for the chain restaurants, right? Especially in this area, y'all better start saving your coin and saving your money because ain't no telling what's happening. I don't even look at my portfolio anymore because the stock market been crashing for 2 weeks, right? Man. Somebody said hazing needs to be abolished. Somebody said, wasn't she trying to expose her producers? They were bootleg Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. Who is this about? Is this about Don? Are you talking about Denzel Foster or Foster McElroy? I'm not sure who you're talking about. But I know the contracts weren't that great with En Vogue. Yes, TLC was screwed over terribly. Yeah, I was confused. So before I went to Italy, En Vogue was still a group. I went to Italy and I was there for 3 years with no TV and radio and stuff. So I was moving through music like it was still 96. Every now and then somebody would get a Vibe magazine from the United States and you could kind of look up stuff. I got back to America. I was so confused. Because my last memory of En Vogue right before I went to America or to Italy was Don't Let Go, right? Set It Off had just come out. And so I just remember randomly watching TV and the Riddle video came on. I was like, there's only 3 of them. I missed the entire EV3 era. So I did not remember Two Gone Too Long and what's the other song? What's the main song they had? Whatever. Just because the songs didn't really cross over that well overseas. So I never heard it on Italian radio. So I never heard those songs. Now I'm watching TV. I'm like, didn't En Vogue have 4 people? Why don't we got 3? They look nice though. Right? There was a whole lot of stuff. I thought Keith Sweat was still jumping. And then they were like, no, he ain't had a hit since 96. I'm like, oh, he ain't had a hit since I left. Oh, okay. All right. Like I told you, I didn't know Biggie Smalls died until I got back. Right? He had been gone for 2 years and I had no idea. I was out of the loop, so playing catch up on everything. I thought Black and TLC were the same group because I heard 808 on the radio, on the Italian radio, Disco Palladio, and No Scrubs had just found its way on radio too. I didn't know that there was a Left Eye verse. The version they were playing on the radio in Italy didn't have Left Eye on it. It was like the album version. And so every time I heard 808, I thought it was TLC because Left Eye was rapping on that. And I was like, I'm glad TLC's back. They got 2 songs I like. So then when I was watching MTV, because I got back to America in summer of 99, and I remember Black's 808 video was on, and I was so confused because I saw Left Eye, and then, I see Shamari, and I'm like, none of these look like T-Boz. But this one, this might be Chili. I think that's, like, I was so confused. And then the No Scrubs video would come on. I'm like, wait a minute, but that's T-Boz. And, thank God they show who the groups are at the bottom. I'm like, okay, this is some group called Black. Gotcha. Like, I had to play catch up on music for years. I was so behind. Let's see. Somebody said managers and producers got most of the money. You see, now y'all see why I self-produce all my music. Y'all be talking trash, but you know what? I'm getting the full check. I'll be getting the full royalty, all mine. Like, man. Yeah. Let me see. Mary J she's had some crappy deals too. Like, I mean, her money's fine now, but everything that she made in the 90s is gone. Now, all her money right now is what she's made in the last decade. Kendu took the rest of it. Let's see. Somebody said Tyler Perry called Clive Davis out regarding Angie Stone's money and was owed. And I think what's jacked up too, a lot of times with people, especially when they're on like different labels and the labels fold. Now, this is not Angie Stone. This is just in general. A lot of times the money gets lost too. Like, say you, what's an example? Like Salt and Pepper, they signed to Red Ant Records after the Very Necessary album. They signed an $11 million deal with Red Ant Records, but then the record label went under. So my question is always like, well, what happens when the label goes under? Like, who manages the royalties and stuff? Because it's not like there's going to be somebody who's like, hey, I know we're no longer a company, but I'm going to make sure I stay on top of things for the next 20 years and make sure I report everything to BMI so you can get your check. Once the label's going, nobody's doing that. So I think people's royalties and stuff get messed up. I know with Motown, some of the people who had got grandfathered in from Tamala Records because it merged with Motown, that's how we ended up getting like Gladys Knight and them on Motown. I always wonder like if paperwork and stuff got all mixed up and messed up, and people, there's checks from 20 and 30 years ago they still haven't gotten. Somebody said, have you seen Mariah's latest performances? She clearly doesn't want to be touring. Now, I'm not a doctor, but I personally think, if you watch My So What Happened, we know that she's been bipolar since 2001, and people kept saying it's the bipolar meds, and I don't think it's that, because she's clearly been on those meds at least since 2001. I think she may, this is me, possibly be on antidepressants, and that's because her mother and her sister just died. Because I noticed that, Mariah was never one to do a whole lot of flipping and backflipping anyway. I mean, she used to sprint on stage back in the 90s. She would run to one side and run back the other way. She don't even fan butterflies no more. She kind of stands in one place. But I noticed like the 2010 performances that she had, she still had some element of energy, right? She still kind of did a little something here and there. Not a whole lot, but she did a lot, but enough. She doesn't seem present right now, and I think she might be on antidepressants, and I think it affects how she moves. That's just my guess. Please do not quote me. Don't be trying to say Calvin said she. I don't know that. That would just be my guess, because I noticed around the time that somebody, either she said or somebody in the team was saying there was something happening with the family. This is before people died, and she had some performances, and she just looked a little out of it, right? Because if you have seen her performances, she is kind of almost like blank faced moving through the shows. And so I'm like, I wonder if that's medication or something. Something is a little off. I think she should take a break. It's not like she needs the money. Mariah is worth a lot. And again, she wrote literally her whole catalog, so she will always have a royalty check. She can never work again and be fine. But I think, maybe take a break, because some clips I saw, she doesn't look well. Yeah. You might say like Felicia Rashad, who's 76 and looks 56. Yeah, Felicia still look good. Mm-hmm. I even like her with the gray micro braids. That looks good on her too. Let's see. I'm waiting on somebody to call Clive Davis to the front. We will forever wonder what Phyllis Hyman's career would have been if Clive Davis is gonna go on to glory. Ain't nobody gonna care. Like, yeah. Yeah, they're not gonna do nothing with Clyde. Somebody says, sad that people make fun of Mariah's performance knowing she lost her mom and sister on the same day. And I think that's the challenge too. Like all that happens, and then you still got to do those shows because there's contracts or they can sue. That part sucks too. I don't know, but I also think a lot of, first of all, the other thing, I think the longer you're in, I think it gets sadder the longer you stay in the industry because most of your peers don't make it with you, right? If we're talking about Mariah Carey's peers that are still doing big shows and arenas and stuff, it's only like Mariah and Mary J. Blige and Janet. Tony's still doing shows. But as far as like that, but if we're talking caliber where they can still sell out an arena, I don't think Tony can pull an arena right now. I love Tony; she's one of my favorites, but I don't see her doing an arena tour anytime soon, and that's not a diss. But of their peers, it's literally Mariah, Janet, and Mary that are left. SWV is kind of returned, and they're doing the tours and Escape as well. But I've never seen them. They're peers, but they're not peers in terms of like album sales, kind of a little bit. You know what I mean? So it's like everybody's out of the picture. Whitney, unfortunately, has gone on to glory. Prince is going on to glory. Michael's no longer with us. All these people that they used to compete with are gone. Celine Dion doesn't have her voice anymore. Shania Twain doesn't have her voice. Well, Shania's still touring, though, I guess. Maybe Shania can be in that mix. But yeah, it probably gets lonely. You don't even want to go to the award shows because you don't know anybody. Or everybody's treating you like a senior citizen. The managers and everybody, half of them have left the industry or they go on to different things, and it's just you're out there trying to, still appease your fans, but it doesn't feel the same. So I'm sure it's probably a sad thing to do. Yeah. Yeah, Shania lost her voice in 2003. She was bit by a tick and ended up getting Lyme disease on top of the husband Mutt cheating on her with her best friend. And then they got married. So then she married the best friend's husband. Yeah. Zerolin said, that might be an interesting topic. At what point does an artist call it a day? Do they keep performing until they pass away or an accident happens, or do they ride off into the retirement sunset? I think they should do it as long as they love it. As long as you enjoy it and can still do it, go for it. All right? Because look at how good Tina was in her last tour. She was 70 and still was getting it in. I thought she did great. I think even Janet, she doesn't dance as hard, but I will say out of her peers, I'm not even trying to sound biased. I feel like she's giving the best show right now. People get hard on Janet, like, oh, she don't dance as hard. And I'm like, no disrespect. I just saw New Edition and I saw what Bobby was able to give. And that's not a diss to Bobby because he had a stroke and a heart attack. But again, or I saw Kid and Play do what they did and they were struggling to do the Kid and Play dance. I'm like, see, but then y'all want Janet to still do the Miss You Much chair routine, right? These people are getting old, right? They physically want to do the things that we love them for, but Mother Nature kicks in. Age kicks in. The knees start to go bone on bone, right? Even with singing, as much as I love Patty, now that Patty's 80, a lot of the power that she once had is gone, which is expected, and she still has this beautiful falsetto, and she had a really great performance of Two Steps Away at that CMT event. But somebody was saying like, oh, Patty don't be singing like she used to. She's 80. What 80-year-old do you even know still has bottom in their voice? Even when I saw a clip of Maxine Waters and them chewing out that guy at that government building when they were trying to say, let us in, Maxine can't even yell anymore. She's like, let us in, right? And I'm like, see, I thank you, Maxine, for fighting for us, but you get some of them young kids to do the fighting, okay? Yeah. Let me see. Hey, Calvin, do you think, why you got to call a girl a taco? Do you think Latako is heading back to the group? He's talking about Latasha from Escape anytime soon after their residual freestyle, and will they let her back in? They'll let her back in once she and Tamika are good, but until then, she will not be back in that group. I know that's happening. Plus, going from 4 to 3, they only got to split it 3 ways. They enjoying the money, and they've been just fine. And I think because she was being real messy right before the tour and was trying to sue and stop the show and all that stuff, they're probably not that excited about her coming back. So we'll see what happens with that. But I don't think Escape, you will get the original 4 until the 2 sisters work out their issues. I think Tiny and Candy are totally fine with her coming back, but not unless the 2 sisters are good, right? Like I said, all these acts in Vogue, Escape, SW, these acts are all 50s and 60s. There's only so much time left where they're going to still be able to pull promoters that are going to give them arenas and stuff to do these big shows. So I'm like, get it in now while you still have the opportunity, because eventually, the shows get smaller with age. And it's not because people aren't interested, but a lot of your fan base has aged up and going to glory too, right? Let's see. Also, the vocal cord, thank you, Alan. Also, the vocal cords become less flexible and stiffer as you get older. And somebody like Patty, who was a powerhouse belcher, like even when you listen to her Timeless Journey album from 2004, mind you, I think Patty was in her 60s by then. Patty was still singing like she was in the 70s on that album. You listen to songs like It's Time or I Want Something More, like Patty was singing, right? So you do that consistently for decades and decades. Eventually, your body, it just wears down, right? Let's see. Somebody said Beyonce's getting there too. You notice she sings she uses a lower pocket a little bit more often. Her voice has gotten a little bit darker with age. That also comes with having children too, right? So she has to protect her voice, so she performs a little bit differently. She's not going to be singing Freakum Dress in Greenlight and all them songs off B-Day that was way up here in key, and you got to belt the whole song. You're not going to get too much of that. You might get a piece of it. She'll incorporate it in a medley or something, but she's not about to be doing all those songs full-throated no more. Somebody said Gladys Knight walking off the stage. When I saw Gladys a few years ago, she was still a really good voice, but Gladys moves a little bit slower too, right? And she sit on that stool. It's just, listen, all of our legends are getting up there. It comes with age. I don't think we realize how fast time moves. I was telling somebody, like, man, I swear I was like 19 a year ago. And like, now I'm 36. I'm like, wait, man, what happened? Like, man. Dionne Warwick. Oh, Dionne is still touring too. Yeah, Dionne's voice has changed. It works for what she does, but they got to adjust to their new voices as they get older. And they come from eras where they had to really do the singing. They don't get all this extra technology and help that the new singers get. Like, new singers got everything. First of all, the microphones have pitch correction, extra compression. You can add extra bass into the mic. So even on your worst day, you can still sound relatively decent as long as you have a good ear and can sing in key, right? None of that was there back then with them. Some of them used to just have an amp and a mic. Just go out there. Anita Baker still sounds really good. She mean as hell, but she still sounds good when we saw her. Somebody said, hell, even the Whispering Man sings differently. Smokey. Well, I think too, because he sings so much in falsetto. Falsetto is hard to maintain long term because it's actually not good for your voice if you have a very airy falsetto. Because it really, your falsetto, the notes don't connect as smoothly if you've done it for a really, really long time. Which is why, if you've ever heard, sometimes you might go to a concert and you see somebody singing in falsetto and they switch back to chest voice, and sometimes their voice will crack or pop to kind of get back into the right pocket. You kind of sometimes see that. Sometimes coming out of falsetto back to your head and chest voice doesn't always go well, and sometimes coming out of your chest back to your head doesn't go well. I always think of like Beyonce when she does Speechless on the Beyonce Experience, and when she does that big high note on Speechless, and then she comes back with she comes out of chest voice and goes back to head voice, and she kind of cracks but cleans it up really, really good. Yeah, their voice does a whole lot. So, and then it showed me that she was human. I said, okay, there we go. Shaka still sounds amazing. I will say Shaka's a bit younger than all of them too. Shaka's only like 70 something. How old is Shaka? Shaka's Shaka Khan. How old is Shaka? I think Shaka's like 70 years old. Yeah, she was born in 53. She's 71. So she's a lot younger than like Gladys and Patty and Dionne. So there's a little bit more elasticity there. Does Brandy even tour big arena shows? She did arenas during the Never Say Never era, but she doesn't, oddly enough, she hasn't done a lot of touring lately. I would love to see her do a tour with, some of her other industry peers. Let's see. I got to see all of them grow up. Listening to them, especially Anita Baker, one of my I'm sorry, I'm acting like I can't read. I got to see all of them grew up listening to them, especially Anita Baker. One of my aunt and my late parents' favorite, one of my aunt and my late parents' favorite singers. Yeah, Anita, we played Anita a lot in the house when we cleaned up. Speaking of, if you follow me on Instagram, you saw that post I made on Wheel of Fortune. I was so pissed. The clue was Midnight Train to Georgia, right? The girl had almost all the letters on the board. It was a black girl too. So, I I root for the black person on every game show, whether it be Jeopardy, the black family on Family Feud, the black person on The Price is Right. If we on it, I'm rooting for us to win. So it was her versus the other two. And the puzzle was obviously Midnight Train to Georgia. It was obviously. And then I just knew she had it. She's like, I'd like to song. I'm like, here we go. We got to get the money. And she said, Midnight Train to Germany. I said, what? Actually, I got the audio from it because I was recording it. Then I was cussing out the TV at the same time. I was so pissed. Like, you got to be kidding me. Oh, all right, here we go. Piss me off.
Beverly. Midnight Train to Germany.
I was like, ma'am, what do you do? What are you doing? And I was like, clearly your mama did not play the classics when y'all clean the house, and it shows Midnight Train to Germany. Don't piss me off. Like, man. All right, we got a few more minutes. Let's see here. Somebody said Whitney would have retired after the Sparkle movie. She couldn't have kept performing much. She shouldn't have done the Nothing But Love tour. I don't know why they put her on that. They set her up. She wasn't ready. But I will say the highlight of that era is the performance of $1 Million Bill on Italy X Factor. That was, I think, the best performance from the I Look to You era, where that reminded me of the Whitney I grew up on, where she sounded really, really good. Yeah. Somebody said Shaka's good when she's sober. Yeah, me and my godmom saw Shaka in 2021, one of the best concerts I ever went to. We had us a time. Everybody in the venue was getting on our nerves, though, because they were being all super bougie and regal and wanting to sit all upright. And I'm like, it's Shaka Khan. She's doing Do You Love What You Feel. If y'all don't get up and shake a leg, like me and my godmom was high-fiving and having us a time. People was trying to tell us to sit down. I said, no, we paid too much for these tickets, and it's Shaka Khan. I'm sorry. This is not the Kennedy Center. We're at the MGM, right? It's folks getting drunk off Henny in the other room next door. Be for real. Anyway. Oh yeah, Sade. I think Sade has one more. They got one more project for that group. I think she'll pop up one more time, right? I know she had the song she dedicated to her child, which is really nice. Tevin Campbell still sounds good. Tevin's still young too, and I will say for a lot of the acts who kind of disappeared for some years, the wear and tear on the voice is not there. Like Tevin did some Broadway and stuff, but Tevin kind of took a break for years, so it's like he didn't do that strenuous touring year after year. Like if you compare like him to like a Monica, and this is not a dig, but Monica's voice clearly needs rest. Monica is always, if I go to Ticketmaster right now, I know she at least got a show. Monica has been on tour since 2005. She ain't ever got off the road. And all of that touring has definitely done some wear and tear on her voice. The last two times I saw her, she didn't really sound as great as I'm used to hearing. And I think it's, her voice is all that performing and singing every night. Let's see. Yep. 2 shows. She got a show April. Oh, okay. At least April. She just did a show out here not too long ago. April 26th, Girls Night Out. Monica, Lil Kim, Maya, Carrie Hilson, 702. Okay. That's in Bridgeport, Connecticut. But yeah, every time I look, Monica got a show. Monica be on the road all year. All right. Yeah, you gotta rest it a bit. Like, Lord. Somebody said Deborah Cox's voice changed. Yeah, Deborah's been on Broadway a lot and doing a lot of touring and stuff too. And, she really had a resurgence in like dance and house music. So, she's always doing a lot of club spots and stuff too. Yeah. Somebody said Chris Brown is still young, music-wise, 37. And then like Chris, for his music, like he be singing when he wants to, but a lot of his stuff doesn't require him to really test the limits of his vocal range. Because he's more of a visual dancing performing artist. So he can sing, but he's not having to sing as hard every night, right? So he's got some years still. He should be fine if he takes care of his voice. I noticed Wanye from Boyz II Men's voice is going through the change. He still sounds good, but it's going through the change. Stuff happens, right? And I will say Chris's voice changed a bit because he was so young when he started. So he has to sing songs like Yo a little bit heavier to kind of get the notes out a bit smoother. All right. I'm about to wind this down. Let's see. Calvin, what's your favorite Janet album? I assume you're a Rhythm Nation Janet fan. Velvet Rope is my favorite. Rhythm Nation is my second favorite. And then it's between All For You and Control. Then between Demeter Joy and Unbreakable. 21 and Discipline at the far end. I was not crazy over those. But yeah. Let's see. Somebody said Brian McSorley can sit on sandpaper. Oh God! I ain't gonna say the rest of that part. Now, Tamia still sounds amazing. I think I told y'all when we went to the show, it was like a Valentine's Day show. It was Tamia and Joe. Now, Joe was the headliner. Y'all know Joe's my favorite. Like, if there was any male vocalist whose voice I wish I had other than Kevon Edmonds, it's Joe and Kevin Campbell. But Tamia, to me, was the highlight of the show. Like, even though she opened, this should have been her show. Like, Tamia was hitting notes that I'm like, how did you do that? And how did that come out so naturally and so easily with no effort? Like, notes that were, there's some people who sing better than the record. Like, there's some artists who they give their all in the studio and can't really do it live. And there's some who, you know, they go in the studio and have a good time and then they get on stage and just cut a fool. That was Tamia. Every song, I mean, that girl sang. I was like, God, I need to see her again. That was an excellent concert, right? Yeah, that was really, really good. Is it true Beyonce tickets aren't selling? No, her tickets are selling fine. And I will say it was actually very bold to do a stadium tour so close to one that you just wrapped. I think what was smart was it's kind of a limited set of dates. Like, I mean, she added some more, but it's not as big as Renaissance because they're not going to as many cities. They're only going like I think 7 or 8 US cities, which I think is really smart. That way you pull in different markets. So if there's only 2 DC area shows, that means the people in Baltimore got to come to DC and the people in Virginia got to come to DC and West Virginia got to come to DC. So you sell it out. Smart move. I still got to get tickets. Since I did not go to Renaissance, I told myself I will go to Cowboy Carter. Let's see. Somebody said, "All Right" featuring Heavy D is better. Well, better than what? All Right is one of my favorite songs though from Janet. Actually, one of my favorites. It makes an appearance in my new Jack Swain episode. Shantae Moore sounds good too. Yeah, Shantae still sounds good. I just listened to her. What's the Tank podcast that does R&B music? She was on that. I just listened to that literally last week. What is it? R&B Money podcast. She was just on that. That was a good interview. I was trying to get her on my platform, but my platform's not big enough. And once she married Stephen Hill and the checks got bigger and opportunities got bigger, she doesn't know us little bloggers anymore. It's fine. I still love her. Somebody said, yeah, there's less shows to ensure that she sells out without any trickery. Plus, you don't want to oversaturate the market. I think touring is about to take a hit by the end of this year. Depending on what's happening with the economy and people's money, it's going to be a repeat of what we kind of saw in 2009. Yeah, we'll see what happens with that. Somebody said, right, Brian used to be my go-to. Now I won't pay money to see him breathe. Yeah, it's crazy the antics that some of these people have had, how they will sabotage their brand with some foolery. Like Brian McKnight and that stuff with his son. Ouch. DMV in the building. Yes, we love the DMV. Somebody said, I've seen videos and TikToks of the Beehive getting angry about Beyonce tickets. I'm gonna find me some tickets, but I ain't paying no $500 and $600. I need the tariff special. So whatever tariff tickets y'all got, that's what I need, Beyonce. I'm not paying $500 and $600. I ain't got it. Well, I got it, but I don't want to spend it. Right? And I got a car note. So nope. Somebody said it's also concert festival season starting off now. Yeah, I'm gonna cut back on concerts this year. I got some big trips planned. Plus, I'm still doing some film stuff. We're still working on a different project, the documentary thing. I'm still filming. We're still doing the film festival circuit for Pullover, so I can hit you for the first quarter of the year. I'm going down to ABFF in June. I think I'm skipping Essence. Yeah, my plate's a little full. Somebody said, thank God for those who record and post concerts on YouTube. Yeah and no, because I want concert DVDs to make a return. But I do appreciate the people who do record these shows because I like to watch all the people's shows anyway. Even the ones I went to, I'll still watch them on YouTube afterwards, just to relive it all. Like, yeah. Who would you spend your most expensive ticket on an artist? I mean, Janet was the last one I was spending top dollar on, and nobody else. Beyonce is like the second highest I would spend money on, but everybody that I've wanted to see that was worth like top dollar I've seen. So yeah, the days of spending like $700 and $800 on a ticket, I don't see anybody else worth going to see to pay that much for. That I'm into. There's some great folks, but I ain't. Nope. And that was normally because, at least for Janet, I always wanted to be like an arm's length away. So I always paid big, big money for her stuff. But even with her tickets are never ridiculously priced. For an individual ticket, I've never paid more than like $500 for a Janet ticket. And the closest I've been to Janet was third row. So let me see. Anybody else? If Tina Turner was still alive, I would have paid top dollar to see Tina. Yeah, but I messed that one up. She came in on 9. I didn't go. Somebody said the Missy tour, she was really good. Yeah, I feel like Missy should have did a longer tour or a second leg. It was a really, really, really fun show. I was sick when I went. Like, yeah, I remember I got sick and lost all that weight. And the Missy show was like the first public thing I had gone to, and I was not really 100%, but I was not missing that show. So I was in there with my mask on. I didn't have like anything respiratory. It was my stomach was still all messed up. I had my little bottle of water to stay hydrated, and I was in there going through it, but I was not missing that show. Like, I was not missing Missy. Like, man, do I listen to hip hop and rap? Not as much. I mean, of the rappers that I listen to that are current, I really do enjoy Tyler the Creator. Me and my good friend are going to that show. He comes here, I think April 1st. So we're going to go to that. That'll be my third time seeing Tyler the Creator. I might actually kind of almost be a stan. I don't know. My favorite 3 rap groups, as you all know, Outkast, Tribe Called Quest, but my favorite group has always been Little Brother. Duckworth, I don't really know what to categorize him as because he does rap, but he does dance music and house, and he does a little bit of... Duckworth kind of reminds me of what I do, only I think I sing more than rap. I don't really rap. But yeah, those are kind of my current favorites. Somebody said, leave Mary. I didn't say nothing to Mary. What did Oh, no, that's not to me. Somebody said, I heard Mary's been lip syncing her songs. I don't know. I haven't seen the Mary show. But Mary looks like she's ready to go home. Okay, Mary said, I'm tired. This is the For My Fans tour. And when this tour is over, don't ask me for nothing else because this is all you're getting. She's here on the 4th. I might go if I get a last minute ticket, but I've seen Mary a few times already. So, yeah. Have I gained my weight back? Not quite. I'm about 8 pounds away from what I would like to get back to. So before I got sick, my peak weight was 155. The last time I looked on a scale, I was about like 144-ish. And that was like a month ago. And I know I put on some weight since then because my clothes ain't fit right. I don't have a scale in my home, so I don't know what I weigh right now. But yeah. The only good thing I will say, though, is as I got this weight back, I got it through like actually working out. When I first put on a lot of the weight, it was just because I was aging up and eating good, right? And then I started going to the gym because I didn't like how I looked. I was like, oh, let's fix this. But now that it's like rebuilding properly, it's like everything looks great. I like how I look right now, but I want to put on like a nice, healthy 10 more pounds. And God willing, my face doesn't get any more fuller than it is now because it's starting to fill back out. I was like, oh, I'm getting these cheeks back. Yeah, a lot of the weight goes to my face. I don't like how I look with too much weight, but it is what it is. Oh, Kendrick is on tour. I might go to the Kendrick show. That Kendrick is a pretty fun show. The whole scandal with Ticketmaster is the reason why tickets are so high, especially when most of that money doesn't go to the artist. Ticketmaster is such they're a Live Nation. Even the venues. You know, like a lot of these artists don't even want to go on these massive tours. Like when they do these tours that are like 50 cities and stuff, sometimes they don't even want to do that many days. They only want to do like 20. But Ticketmaster / Live Nation has to justify the tour bus going from, I don't know, Atlanta to what's on the way there? To Atlanta to Kansas City. And so they'll say, well, Live Nation will say, well, we do own a venue in Memphis. So we're going to have you add a show in Memphis on the way there. And so a lot of times there will be shows that are added to the itinerary just because there are Live Nation venues in between the different cities that the artists want to go to, and they have to justify having bus loads of people go all the way from this city to that city. And so they try to have this goal where they never go more than like 150 miles without stopping somewhere. And so they will force artists to actually add shows in places that they will never want to go to, because that's why, you know, artists will have a show at Madison Square Garden and then also do the arena in Jersey that's right over, like it's literally 20 minutes, well, not 20 minutes, like 40 minutes away, and then still do that Connecticut arena, and then still do a Philly show, and then still do Bethlehem, Pennsylvania show, and then still, I'm like, why are y'all doing like 5 shows in this same little radius? Like, man, yeah, it's Live Nation is, ugh. And they bought half of these venues, right? So a lot of the mom and pop local venues are like going out of business. the death of a lot of these industries will be private equity firms and corporate greed and these tech bros that have ruined everything. Like, man. Let's see. Somebody said Don was my favorite member of In Vogue. Love your attitude and stage presence. I don't know who my favorite member of In Vogue always changed. Terry used to be my favorite for the longest, right? Because my favorite In Vogue single is Runaway Love. And I love the way Terry sings her verse. But Don takes that song home. Like, I love how Don sounds on the end of Runaway Love. But Terry was always my favorite vocally for the longest. And then it kind of switched to Maxine because I love the texture of Maxine's voice, right? Especially on songs like Give It Up, Turn It Loose, or they have this song called like No, 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 Can't Come Back, where she sounds really good on that. But Terry was to me was the powerhouse, like especially on like Too Going Too Long. And then I don't know if Don has ever been my favorite, but when I was little, when I thought of In Vogue, Don was the person that came to my mind first. And that's probably because she was kind of the face of the Funky Divas era, her and Maxine. Like if you notice, their first era, there's a lot of Cindy and Terry up front, right? You don't have to worry. Cindy leads. Lies, all four of them are on, but it's still kind of Cindy's song. Don't Go is Terry's song. And then Hold On is Terry and Cindy. And then when you get to Funky Divas, Maxine and Dawn carry Never Gonna Get It. Dawn carries Giving Them Something You Can Feel. Maxine carries Give It Up, Turn It Loose. All four are on Free Your Mind. Runaway Love, which is later down the line. Everybody has a verse except for Maxine, but she has a little opening talking part. It feels good to be grooving again. I was like, y'all sound like such aunties on this. Feels good to be grooving again. And then but the Don't Let Go of Love. That even though all the members sing on it, I think of Don. But Terry and Maxine I really enjoyed. I like all the members though. Cindy I thought was gorgeous. What a Man. Yeah, that's Dawn's song. That's hers all day. But actually, Maxine kind of eats on that one too, though. Let me see here. All right, we're about to get off this. We've had a great time. Plus, I still got the book club tomorrow. I'm not going to have any voice. And then I'm on I forgot the name of the podcast. I will share it with you guys as soon as they give me the information. But I'm on a podcast Tuesday talking about Black male educators that actually have left the education field. Even though I'm not a teacher, I'm more so after school. But yeah, I was excited to share my experience. So we'll talk about that. And then the rest of this week is dedicated to finishing my New Jack Swing. Somebody said, Don never learned how to be in a group. I think she's the reason Lucy Pearl didn't work out. Could be wrong. I just don't think everybody's meant for a group. I don't think I would have. Well, I could have been okay in a group until I started doing the production stuff. And if I was ever in a group, if I were ever out of the group, it would have been because we had creative differences and I had ideas nobody wanted to use or something like that. But groups aren't for everybody, right? But I think sometimes you got to know how to use your leverage. Like if you're in a group that's like, I think In Vogue, I wish Don would have at least stayed for the EV3 era. Then so I think if things would have worked better for everybody actually. But oh well. You got to kind of utilize when you have the leverage. I think the challenging thing with the music industry is you notice a lot of people walk away from it while they're on top or while they still have the resources to do a lot of what they want to do. And then they'll go independent and everything else and everything slows, right? And it's because there's just so much BS behind the scenes where it's like, it's not even worth this and the fame. And yeah, they got the $1 million budgets for my video, but F this, I'm out. Like you see so many people literally walk away, right? They've had enough. Can I make a playlist with podcast appearances? That's a great idea. I mean, well, on my website, I have every podcast appearance I've ever made. If you go to calvinmichaels.com and go to press, every podcast I've appeared on is on there. But that's a good idea too. All right, folks, it's time for bed. It is time for bed. What would you name your group? Well, when I was in middle school, we had a group called BPM because that was my friend Brian, my friend Patrick, and then I was Michael. Brian Patrick Michael, BPM. But we didn't even realize it was BPM, like beats per minute, until years later. So I was in the right places already to begin with. Right? And then I was on this dance team one time, and we were called No Boundaries. And the only reason we were called No Boundaries is because the shirts we got from Walmart was from the No Boundaries brand, and we were going to take the shirts back afterwards, and we never popped the tags. And so the tag said No Boundaries, so that was the name of the group. So yeah. All right, guys, it's been real. I still need to actually go and put the timestamps on there. See, like once the live ends, then I have to sit through it and put the timestamps while you all get to sleep peacefully, right? Anyway, so I'm gonna do that, and then yeah. Like I said, book club tomorrow, page 243 until we finally finish this book. I feel like we've been reading Rick James for 20 years, right? But yeah. Anyway, a lot going on. Protect your peace. Like I said, stay safe, stay sane, mind your business so that you can age well. And I will see you guys again. See ya.